So on December 11th in 2006, we're out on a mission. The area was pretty heavily used by the bad guys for putting in IEDs. And our mission was to go out there. We were supporting 3-5. Some infantry guys found some ordnance. It looked like a weapons cache, and we're driving out there to go get it. If you go down this road, always lead with the MRAP, the big armored truck, because chances are there's going to be an IED down there. And sure enough, there was an IED in the middle of the road. It blew up. It was daisy chained, so it was two big 155s that were one next to another. And I hit my head so hard on the roof that I broke my helmet in half, my freaking Kevlar helmet.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm AJ Pasciuti, a retired Marine, Force Recon, Scout Sniper, and Marine Gunner with 21 years of service, multiple combat tours, and a lifetime of lessons learned in the arena itself. On this show, I sit down with warriors from every front line to uncover what combat truly feels like and how it shapes the way we see life, each other, and ourselves. This is Combat Story.
He spent his career walking toward bombs, toward uncertainty, and toward consequence, where one decision could mean life or death. Timothy Colomer is a United States Marine Corps EOD technician, wounded in Iraq, who continued to serve at the highest levels on national bomb squads and task forces. But his story doesn't end there, because after the war, he found a new way to serve, not with a bomb suit, but with a canvas. Today, his mission is the same: to protect, to connect, and to give people hope, just in a different form. This is Combat Story. Welcome back to Combat Story, everyone. As always, my name is AJ Pasciuti, and I am super excited to be sitting with a friend of mine, Gunnery Sergeant Timothy Colomer, United States Marine Corps EOD technician. And you may notice something for those of you on YouTube with a little different background for me right now. I have a piece of artwork that Timothy made for us and donated to the show, and so I wanted to be able to highlight that during this episode, and we will hang it proudly on the back wall of Combat Story to live forever. But with that, Tim, I'd love to welcome you to the show.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. I don't know if you want to tell that entire story, but
if it makes me,
it's been a hard runway to get to this point, man.
Yes, it has. And first and foremost, I would like to publicly apologize for how difficult getting you on the show has been. A little bit of backstory. Tim and I have been planning this episode for a long time. We've been super excited to try to get him on the show. We actually were able to fly Tim. I will say Tim flew out from his home in Texas to Southern California to do an in-person interview with us. And any of those of you that follow my personal Instagram, I was doing the Recondo Hundo. And the very first day of the Recondo Hundo, I ate some dodgy Mexican food. It was delicious, but I got super sick. So Tim flew out here, was sitting in a hotel a block away from me, and I had 3 days of nonstop food poisoning. And so he got a trip to Southern California and no opportunity to interview. So we did what Marines do best, and we improvise, adapt, and overcome, right? And so here we are doing this on this. And I think this will be the first of many interviews that we do with Tim throughout his illustrious career. So with that, I'd like to apologize and again, formally welcome you to the show.
Yeah, brother, I appreciate it. I actually reached out to a couple of friends of mine, two guys that I was in Iraq with that were on Marines. And one of them was my partner that went on to be a master gunnery sergeant. He was my partner when he was a sergeant, which was really cool to have longer conversations, deeper ones. And then I had another cat that I met out there. He wasn't on my team, but he was in my platoon. That, you know, he was a great guy. We got to hang out, smoke cigars, eat some of the better Mexican food.
In my defense, my favorite Mexican food place is in a gas station, but it does come with a few warnings every once in a while.
Those are the best kind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, without further ado, my friend, it is super great to sit down with you. I'm excited to be able to kind of dig into who you are and your origin story and what led you to serve, and talk about some of the things that you saw in service. But my first question revolves around, you know, where you're from. What kind of drew you to service? What was your upbringing like? And if you can give us a little bit of detail on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. I have a kind of a Midwest background. So you watch any Midwest TV show from back in the early 80s. We were kind of a sitcom family. I had two younger brothers. My dad was a police officer in a suburb of Chicago, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. We lived in a very small town in Chicago. I wouldn't say it even touched Chicago. It was quite on the outskirts of Chicago, called Winfield. And Winfield was literally a one light town, and it was a flat yellow light. And we had one grocery store that, as I remember, it also had an Ace Hardware that was attached to it. We had an old school post office. So you kind of get the picture in your head, right? We had cobblestone there. We had a bridge that went over a small creek. I mean, it was very like Norman Rockwell-esque. So growing up, there wasn't a whole lot of exposure to outside of our little bubble there. So it was very wholesome background. My parents were both both very religious Christians, and it was a wholesome upbringing. Didn't get in a lot of trouble. Had a really good time. And then my dad, as he retired as a police officer, he won a trip to go down to Florida through PBA or something like that. I can't remember which organization it was. And we took a cruise down to the Bahamas, which was like wildly eye-opening from a kid from like the Midwest. Like literally we had corn stalks in my backyard, like not too far away from the fence line, to going to Nassau, Bahamas, and seeing a straw market and the culture and, well, frankly, the poverty and how some of these people are like really, really scraping by to try to make a difference. And my dad, God bless him, I don't think we were there 15 or 20 minutes, and he just looked at my mom and said, "Patty, we're moving." And it was mostly because of the weather. We were on a beach. We were drinking out of coconuts. It's Florida, the Bahamas, synonymous with, kind of Caribbean life, a little bit warmer and a little bit slower. God, things slowed down a lot. So, I mean, quite literally, we got back from the Bahamas. That was an Easter vacation. So it's kind of the holiday time right now to when my parents leaned into, we're moving to Florida. They put up the house. I believe it was like 2 weeks on the market, and bam, we're driving from Chicago to Orlando in a Lincoln Continental with two boys, three boys altogether, my two brothers and I, a 70-pound German Shepherd, and all the crap that goes along with kids.
It's like a National Lampoon's kind of like vacation kind of thing.
Very much. I was shocked that we didn't stop for the world's largest ball of twine, or
Yeah, exactly.
or to see the mud house.
How old were you during this time frame?
I was in fifth grade, and then my brother under me is we don't have that much of a difference, 18 months. So he was maybe in fourth grade, and then my youngest brother, he was still kind of a baby. I think he was like 3, maybe 4 years old. And we just hit it. There was no looking back. It was a huge culture shock because there was.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, dude, we moved in that Easter or spring break time frame. It just kind of married up really well for our timing. And when I went to school and I started my first day of school there, it was like Bob Marley meets John Cougar Mellencamp. It was like horses. I was not used to like the surfer bum lifestyle. I know I had a Midwest accent, and it wasn't like the Bears kind of Chicago accent. Midwest kind of has like almost like a draw also that I still catch myself doing every once in a while. The only things that I had in common with those kids were absolutely like granular, like super, super minutia stuff. Like maybe we liked the same band, or it was really, really low to the ground. I didn't have a whole lot of
Right, surface level, maybe. Yeah.
100%. Did you see the new comic book that came out? That kind of thing. So kind of trying to get into the culture. I did hit an inflection point. There's a real turning point for me when I discovered Kelly Slater was coming up, and he was at Cocoa Beach, and those were some of my home breaks. Would be able to go over there, and he actually had a really positive effect on the kids in the area. He was anti-drug, anti-drinking. He was just kind of all about just being in the water, being in the moment, and just going out there and surfing. And him and a couple of the magazines was a big motivator, especially for kids that are growing up almost in parallel age with this guy. That this dude just got, like, I think his first contract with Quicksilver was like $1.25 million in '92. We're like, that's crazy. So it was a driver too. It was a motivator for sure to get out in the water and maybe, see how you could test and compete against some other guys that were out there.
That's fantastic. And again, especially when you are, I mean, like quite literally being ripped from everything that you know in the suburbs of Chicago and that lifestyle, and then having as a fifth grader moving across the country and, parachuting into this entirely different ecosystem. And then also, kids kind of suck sometimes, man. And it's like tough, and finding surfing, may have been that kind of, that leash, if you will, that kind of tethered you to, a different portion of the community.
Yeah, it's funny. Like literally right around that time, I'm going to kick myself because I don't remember the name of the movie, but there was a surfing movie that came out where this kid from the Midwest moves to Hawaii.
North Shore?
North Shore.
Oh, was it North
It
Shore?
was North
Okay.
Shore. That was
1987. Yeah, there's a reason why I didn't see North Shore in 1987. I was 3 years old at the time. So
Yeah, it was that was about 2 years after we moved to Florida. Yeah, I think I was
dude, no way. That's
in sixth or
fantastic.
seventh grade.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so did you want to be a professional surfer? Is that what your kind of, your goals were at? Or was this just a clique that you were kind of running around in school with?
Man, I wanted to be honestly, but the level of dedication and time that it takes to be a pro surfer. Frankly, my parents, they just didn't have it. Uh, the beach was 45 minutes to an hour away. Waves back then, we didn't really have any good predictors of waves. You couldn't get on the internet. There wasn't an internet. It was basically, see if you could watch and read the weather patterns and anticipate a wind swell. Because in Florida, it was like few and far between you get ground swells. So it's like, let's anticipate wind swells. Let's go surfing during, run ups and the aftershock of hurricanes. I surfed some really dangerous times that we got, we got really lucky. Hurricane Hugo, man, we had 17-foot overhead waves that are crashing down on Cocoa Beach that were 80% closed out. If you got out in the lineup and you got one, you were in the washing machine for like 45 minutes trying to figure out which way was up. It was dangerous, but
Oh my, yeah, no kidding.
yeah, the guys that got out of Florida, they had opportunities like getting sponsorship and surfing, predict the waves of California and Costa Rica and California. It would have been a lot of fun, but I mean, I knew what my limitations were, and just going out and having a good time, dude. I had so much fun with my buddies, just going out and ripping as much as we could. 8 hours a day, we'd be peeling for the better part of a week. It was a great time.
Yeah, you have a very different skin complexion than I do as well. So maybe not as well suited for direct Florida sun, I'm sure. So how did this transition and when did you start first thinking about the military? Because, fifth grade, there's, kind of boys and GI Joes was probably big at the time.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a decision? Was there an inflection point, anything that kind of drove you to service?
Yeah, it was. It was a very specific moment that in high school, I want to say it was my junior year. It was my run up right before I was a senior. We took a school trip to Costa Rica, and while it was central Costa Rica, we landed in San Jose. We took buses all over the daggone country, and we did go beachside. We saw some volcanoes, all this other stuff, and coupled with the short little trip that we had to the Bahamas when I was a kid, I just had a really, really big passion for travel. I wanted to go out and see the world. It didn't have, and I've been frank with people. It wasn't out of a drive for patriotism, although we're a very patriotic family. Wasn't the education or all the benefits. It was, I want to get out of my parents' house and I want to go see the world. And when I enlisted, I was in a program. I had scored well enough on my ASVAB to be able to pick an MOS in a duty station, and I picked.
No way.
Yeah, it was a really good program. So I was able to pick an MOS. I chose aviation ordnance. It just sounded kind of cool, kind of sexy, and I picked Iwakuni as my first duty station. And for your listeners, man, that is in the smack dab middle of Japan. You can't get
Yeah.
more Japan than Iwakuni. You leave the gates, and you're like, there's no English anymore. Everything's in.
Yeah, you were in the heart, especially right. When did you actually join?
I joined in. I went to boot camp in '93. I joined in '92. I was 17, and my parents had to sign a waiver for me.
Yeah, that seems actually more common than I would have expected is the permissions, the parents' permission slip. I would say probably 75% of the guests that I've interviewed have had their parents have to sign the form before they go.
Well, my parents took an extra step forward. It was I did want to join the military. I'd kicked around the idea, and I was behaving. I was being a good kid. I wasn't a troublemaker, but I'd go out to surf parties on the beach and get busted with a beer every once in a while. And I came home from school one afternoon, and sitting at the living room table was my dad with a guy in a Marine Corps uniform and a recruiting uniform.
No way.
For real. And I didn't recognize. I didn't put two and two together. I thought it was a police officer, honestly. And my dad is like, this guy wants to talk to you. It's like, moving on. I don't want to talk to that guy. But he used like the oldest, cheesiest recruiting tool on me as possible. Is he brought out these little dominoes? They're called the tiles, and yeah, it's like travel, money, education.
See the world, yeah, benefits, yeah.
Pick one of these three things that I know you're excited about, and it'll be easier for me to sell you something. So that was it, brother. I picked travel, and I think I picked something about money. It was like, didn't even hit my radar. I just want to get out of here. So
Yep.
within 15 minutes, he had me taking a practice ASVAB at the table. He's like, we're going to see if you qualify just right off the top of the bat. And
Yeah, no kidding.
test to make sure that you could walk and chew bubble gum. So roger that. And yeah, the rest is history. I graduated high school, and like 2 weeks later, I was in boot camp. It was yeah, head snapping fast.
And so you went to Parris Island boot camp, which, if anyone follows the show, Randall Parks is a frequent guest on the show, who is a recruit at Camp Pendleton and a drill instructor at Parris Island. And he did state factually that Parris Island is the harder of the two boot camps. And so people have been kind of going back in the comments, but he says the sand fleas was the thing at Parris Island that makes Parris Island insufferable for recruits going through boot camp.
It's not hyperbole. I know there's a lot of, inter-service digs on each other about boot camp, but seriously, those little things, they crawl in your ear, they crawl inside your nose, they get underneath your collar, and it's just like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Just eating at your bearing and your integrity. Is like, I've got to itch my face so bad.
I don't know that I would have made it as an East Coast Marine, because I don't know if I have the discipline not to scratch an itch like that.
Well, they put us in those stupid sand pits to torture us with doing push-ups and stuff. That's where they breed. It's like there's little baby wounds in there that get in your uniform and crawl all around. It is, as they say, for suck. It is.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Man, I am I'm humbled by I've never actually even been to Parris Island, so I have no concept of what this place even looks like. I just imagine sand fleas and pits everywhere.
Just go check it out. If you're ever in South Carolina, it's kind of cool. I mean, it's very, very, very secluded. Like you can't.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, you can't see it from the road. It's like Disney World, where you got to drive 10 miles, find a parking lot. Drill instructor will yell, "Get over there." And what cracks me up is it's also got base housing on there. It's a normal community. It's got like a bank and a PX and stuff you never see when you're in boot camp. You just swear to God that they just took you off to an island out in the middle of nowhere and you're never going to see your parents again.
Would it turn into sand flea food?
Yeah.
Dang. Okay, so graduated boot camp, and then you go to your A school, right? So your MO or your MOS school, and those. So for aviation, aviation ordnance. Where is that school at?
It was broken up into two different locations. I think the first half was in Millington, Tennessee. So my first duty station was actually on a naval air station, a training command, which when you're all motivated and you're young and you're tough as nails getting out of Marine Corps boot camp, when you go to a Navy base, it just slaps differently. Yeah, there was a lot of tension between, the students because it was a joint service school. There was a lot of, machismo. It was a lot of, let's go to the tree line kind of activities. But we got through school. The next place that they sent us to was in, El Toro, Air Station for those that are history fans. You'll find El Toro is a retired military air station in California. We were there when they were closing it down. So we didn't even really get training aside from see all that equipment that's over there. You guys would have worked on that eventually. So go ahead and put it on the truck and we're going to move it to Miramar. And I was on a 3-month moving party. It was, it was basically,
So just immediately show up to the fleet and just do a working party for the next 90 days.
yeah. And that was the second half of school. And then my first duty station was Iwakuni, Japan, because I wanted to travel. It was like, man, we were talking earlier about a culture shock. You're talking about a culture shock from the United States to mainland Japan. Aside from having English speaking, Marines on the base, when you left the base, dude, you better have a map because nobody is speaking English, not very many people. And everything's in kanji, and the roads are smaller. The real estate is tighter. If you get lost, you're going to be a rat inside of a maze. You're just going to be guessing it at some point.
I could imagine that would have been quite the shift.
It was. But fortunately, I had some good leadership there. I had some NCOs that they would gather the troops together, and we'd go out, and one of them would have a car. We'd go out to a campsite, or we'd go to a bar, or we'd catch a train, go to a baseball game in Hiroshima, which are out of control, by the way, the baseball games in Japan. It's like going to a college football game where everybody's like mandatorily has to shotgun Red Bulls all day. It's like super like this level high energy. It's a blast. So yeah, I did a year over there, and that's when you could do 1 year unaccompanied or single, or you could do 3 years accompanied and being married there. So I did a year. It was a perfect amount of time, I think, because I was starting to get homesick. Not just, mom and dad kind of stuff, but America sick. There was nothing really that mapped culturally in Japan that reminded me, except the baseball game every once in a while, right? So I got back to the States and got stationed in North Carolina, and I was there for a good long time. I think 4 or 5 years. At a couple different duty stations.
And did you stay aviation ordnance during that time frame?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first duty station back from Japan, I stayed there, picked up some rank. I got up to sergeant, I think, and then went off to be an instructor, which at that time, and I think it's still true. A sergeant as an instructor at an MOS school is pretty rare. That's usually a twilight career move. It's your terminal rank. You're a master sergeant or master of guns, and you're going to finish out with like 2 or 3 years teaching. But they pulled me up to be an instructor. I thought it was a cool gig. I had just gotten promoted, and my opportunity to reenlist was coming up. So they had a poster in the reenlistment office for EOD, and I was just thinking in the back of my head, I'm a sergeant and I'm an instructor. I've kind of hit a glass ceiling, so why not? I'll try EOD. I had a pretty good idea of what the guys did, a very, very generalized idea of what the guys did. And
what drew you to EOD in the first place?
Well, aviation ordnance, you deal with EOD because you might have some bad ordnance. You might have a fuse that is misfired or not working properly, or you wind up doing a procedure where you need EOD to come out and make something safe. So we dealt with them infrequently. It really didn't happen all that often, but I had a general idea what they did, and that was the bomb squad of the military. They were the ones that would put on the suit and go down range. And most of the time talking to the ones that I knew that would come and visit us every once in a while, they had a really relaxed career. I mean, you go out and do a range clearance every once in a while, go to have a barbecue, go out to the range and practice doing demo or explosive charges and stuff. And that was pretty much it. But it was that time that I decided to re-enlist, that I made the lat move to EOD. And you go through a pretty intense kind of personal inventory with the team. It's almost like a vetting process. Can you handle the stress? Can you handle the study, the workload? Because school is just a bear as far as intensity is concerned. It's one of the highest failed schools that we have in our bucket. And it was basically a vetting process. Like, can you make it? You do a bomb suit walk. Can you physically make it? Are you in shape? And can you handle it? Because the amount of slots that the Marine Corps has for EOD technicians is so small and so precious that it's almost a point of conflict that if let's say Camp Lejeune sends somebody to EOD school that fails out, the guys at Pendleton will give them a hard time because why did you get third? I mean, you burned up a spot, dummy. Why, that is kind of that rivalry that we have. But it's that rivalry that we have, though, that keeps our steel the strongest. Well, we really our way to vet the best technicians and the most able bodies.
So you mentioned a bomb suit walk, and I've never actually worn a bomb suit before. Can you describe? So this is pre going to school. Can you describe what the bomb suit walk is, and then a little bit more about the bomb suit itself and why that's important?
Yeah, I'll even bring a visual aid.
Yeah.
All right. So the bomb suit is made by a company called MedEng, and they're out of Canada, actually. And it's this basically they started out as kind of a materials R&D company that was trying to make better material by the way of Kevlar and bulletproof vests and things like that. And they identified that there was obviously a need in the community that bomb suits, they just didn't exist. There was some protection for bomb squad guys, but it was generally like a steel plate and a glass shield that went up over their face. It was wildly cumbersome. It was super heavy. Technology had advanced, and it was time for them to start looking at better technology. So the basic components of a bomb suit haven't changed since I was on active duty, and it's generally 3 pieces. One piece is like bib overalls that have all of your legs covered up to part of your torso. And then you throw on this the big jacket that wraps around you. It's kind of an iconic look. It's got a big plate that's on the front, a big one on the back. And then the last piece that you put on is your helmet, being your the third piece of kit. And even with material advancements that we've had here, even in the past 10, 20 years, it's an extremely heavy material. It's about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 thick in some places. It's Kevlar. In some places, there's a sheet of ceramic that the technology is thus that it absorbs a blast a little bit better. But altogether, the suit is tightly wrapped around you, so you don't have compression. If something blows up and the fiber is far away from your skin, it has a chance to slam into your skin. So you want to wrap up pretty tight in this suit. And the suit itself induces in some people claustrophobia because you're very much tightly wrapped like a baked potato. But it's also very, very warm. This fabric isn't meant to breathe. And the suit itself, before you put the helmet on, depending on the size, because you have small, medium, and large, it could get up between 95 and 100, 115 pounds just for the suit. Now, the helmet, again, depending on which size you pick up off the shelf, that could be between 15 and 25 pounds. The glass is super thick. It slides down over your head, and then there's a neck protector that goes around you. So there's
Holy moly.
what the suit looks like, and you can see you got the protective chest plate right here. The neck part goes up underneath and over the top of the helmet to prevent anything from getting up into the helmet. And then you got gloves. And what's really cool about the suit is it takes two guys. Most of the time it takes three people, you and two of your assistants, to put the suit on you. And when you go down range and you're working, if something catastrophic goes wrong, there's actually an emergency egress way to get out of the suit. And you could have that entire
Really?
suit off within like a second and a half, and then just pull the helmet off. It's pretty cool. Great technology. It saved a lot of guys, for sure.
So I guess my biggest question when we're looking at the bomb suit itself for me is dexterity.
Yeah.
So what kind of, again, I know very little. I've dealt with EOD techs on my career. Most of the time I've associated that you guys are crazy because you guys will do the things that no one else wants to do. So hats off to you guys, or helmets off to you guys. But I was always concerned because like I think of like, I don't know, Nakatomi Plaza, right? And they've got a bomb and you've got to unclip a wire. And I'm like, okay, but how do you have this giant suit on? And how do you actually have anything other than like mashed potatoes for fingers?
Everything you just said is accurate. You nailed it. Yeah. So that's the big question, was how. It's a lot of training, and we would put those things on, and at platoon or at some companies, we'd play volleyball wearing them. We'd go out on jogs with them. We would do training with them. We got so used to wearing that daggone thing that it just became part of us. And then as far as the dexterity is concerned, you only wear flight gloves, and some guys don't even wear flight gloves. I didn't wear any gloves at all. So you have the full range of motion with your fingers and everything. Visibility has gotten a lot better. In the past, the glass mirror or the glass piece in front would fog up like a motorcycle helmet pretty bad. So they engineered some controls in there with some little fans that blow in and stuff. It's gotten a little bit more advanced for communications. I know now that there's some potential for communications in the helmet. There's some other technological advancements that they've made that I can't disclose, but they're really strong by the way of helping the technician in decision making and relaying real-time information to his team. How about that?
Dude, that's fantastic. I've never thought of that. I didn't even ever associate. You guys call them problems, is that correct? Like, when you guys come up on something, is it called a when you associate is that correct?
Yeah. So that term just goes back to EOD school. And every day that you go out and you have an assignment or a mission to go disarm something, it's called a problem because you're in a training environment. And we just kind of uploaded that into our slang train. And now everything that's explosive downrange is a problem. There's a problem over there. There's a problem over there.
I totally get that, and it's entered into the vernacular, but it's actually really cool for the way that so one of the things is your EOD guys just always, I've found, they just think differently, right? Like, you guys have just been trained from a very young age to look at the world as a problem to solve,
Mm.
and I think that that's really, like, poignant, as you guys go out there to go up to a situation that is just literally rigged to blow, and you have to stop it. So my question revolves around, like, the sense of is there a sense of isolation? Like when you put the suit on and you put the helmet on and the rest of us are like sitting behind a vehicle 100 miles or 100 meters away and we're like, go forth and do great things. Like, what is the sound like? Can you hear your breathing? Walk me through that.
That's a really good question. And it used to be like that. It used to be, there was the generation suit that I had was the EOD 9, and previous to that was the EOD 8. And as soon as you put the helmet on, you lost complete auditory senses. I mean, it was pretty 3 inches thick, padding on padding on padding. And then as far as your visual acuity is concerned, this part hasn't changed. You literally have blinders on like a horse would on a track. It's very focused, straightforward. Your periphery is blocked by the helmet out to a certain extent, maybe about 3 or 4 inches. So your body movement and the way that you deploy yourself, if you want to use, a military term, deploy yourself down the range or downrange, it has to be extremely deliberate. You have to have a full understanding of the battlefield, your left and right lateral limits, where you have your security guys set up, why you're approaching this problem, this device. Potentially, there could be secondary ones or tertiary ones. You're looking out past that for potentially, if you're in Iraq or Afghanistan, or even here in the States now, if EOD operators are working in a non-permissive environment that's not completely shut down, you could have car bombs driving towards you. You could have a little bit more of a complex attack. So having the entire battle space, an understanding of that while having these blinders on and going downrange on something dangerous, you have to have this mental checklist that you go down. Kind of categorically think through things, or else with all of that pollution and noise in your head of all of these different variables, you lose track of something eventually. So I would say all of the EOD guys and bomb squad guys that I know are extremely deliberate in operations and execution, but it's kind of also a way that we live our lives too. Well, you add
Very well said.
into our personal space.
Yeah, very well said. That makes a lot of sense as well, especially when you're trying to deal with and almost categorize, the chaos. The way that I look at it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as, my educational process has gone from, more simple problem sets to more complex problem sets over time, eventually to where you get to establish a test that your final criteria is walking up to an incredibly dynamic and very complex problem set that you have to solve. Is that what your training scenario is like? Can you take us through a little bit of that?
Yeah. So for training, is they used all real cases.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When it came to the ordnance part, we have to learn the ordnance, rockets, landmines, missiles, grenades, ejection seats, anything with an explosive in it. You have to learn it not just for the United States, but you also have to, know that you're going to encounter foreign ordnance around the world too. So we would have to learn about the Chinese, the Russian, the Thai, the British ordnance, Egyptian ordnance, and all of the similarities, and categorically group them into similar groups. So you would have landmines, but the subcategory would be an anti-personnel landmine or an anti-tank landmine. And then subcategories of that would be how they function. And because we have the manuals for these things, we could develop a render safe process fairly easy, just understanding the mechanics of the device. Just basic engineering is one of the things that you learn as an EOD technician. It was the improvised explosive devices that we didn't have a playbook for. Those were the ones that were killing, 80% of our service members were injured or killed by IEDs, is because you didn't know what they were made out of. You didn't know what their triggering mechanism was, if it was on a time delay, if it was wired up hard to a guy with a battery in a set of wires. So the IED thing, that's where the real challenge came in, because every single time you get called to one, it could be a completely different scenario. And that was one of the hardest challenges of working in that battle space. It wasn't the military ordnance, not even by far. It was the cat and mouse game that we had with the bad guys when it came to the IEDs, because we would start developing techniques that would disarm them relatively easily with, the safest amount of distance built in between us, and they would change it. And then we would deploy a robot and we'd see something new. We'd have to adapt to that. So it was just constant evolution of us changing our tactics, that kept us sharp. If you weren't on the top of your game, your team would notice, and it could be dangerous.
My goodness. Yeah, I could only imagine. I think that team culture would probably get set up very, very early in school is how I would kind of imagine it, is this, like what we used to call performance on demand. There is no way to fake the funk as an EOD tech, right? Like you do one thing wrong and in training it's lights out, right? And in real life it's, a catastrophic lights out. So the immense pressure that you guys have, again, jokes aside, it's just, I'm just so in awe of the organization and your guys' MOS. Like I said, it's nothing I've really had the chance to really deep dive into. And I'm excited to go into some of the stuff that you saw operationally as well, because I think from an engineering standpoint, I'm just curious about those. So after your schooling, how long was your schooling, by the way?
Yeah, school for me, well, just the length of time for EOD school is for the Army, the Air Force, and the Marines. It's about 9 months. For the Navy, they add another 3 months on there because they have to do underwater water ordnance on top of it all, like underwater mines, lipid mines, things like that. And it's the very last phase of EOD school is nuclear weapons, because somebody's got to know how to take apart an atomic bomb. Hey, that was a big part, but you also have to have a very high level security clearance for it. And there was a number of us that were on security hold for a little while, waiting for that clearance to come through. So I was there for about a year, maybe a little bit longer, but it's genuinely about 9 months long. The school itself isn't really physically challenging for Marines. Some of the younger guys and I'm not bagging on them, they just have a different pipeline. The Air Force guys and some of the Army guys, these are guys who are 18, 19 years old that get thrust right into the program. And some of them didn't even know what they were signing up for. And I mean, frankly, school is every day, 7:30 in the morning to 16:30 or 4:30 in the afternoon every day. Then you have to go away and eat lunch or dinner, and then you come back because everything is classified secret. Your study hall is from 6 o'clock at night to 9 o'clock at night. And then every morning you have a test. Like literally every morning, there's either a practical test or a written test. And if you fail that test, you get one chance to take the test. If you fail a test, you can get a re-chance to take the test the next day, but you have to pass that test before the next day's test.
Oh, wow.
And then because the Marine Corps likes doing things a little extra, is we had a self-imposed, we had to have a 90%, or else they'd roll us out early and claw back some of the money for the training that they paid for us.
Holy moly.
Yeah, talk about brutal, right?
Yeah, man, the Marine Corps has got to find a way to make it even tougher.
Yeah, exactly. For my initial class, I had 25 guys in my class, and we graduated 4.
What?
Yeah, the attrition rate was roughly 70 to 75% on a regular basis.
Wow, that's incredible. And I'm sure it's from a litany of things, but when I went to dive school, I would say dive school was the most professional school that I'd been to because everything that they did was high risk. And so there was never any kind of like real jackassery. I would imagine very much the same for EOD because again, it's like the things you're learning are extremely important. Also the classification levels. These are all layers that I had no real idea. I mean, now that you're explaining it to me, I'm like, well, yeah, duh, that makes sense. Why didn't I ever think about that? But I've never gone through this journey itself. So I've never even thought of like a classified study hall. That's so incredible to think about.
Yeah, yeah. The study hall is all classified. The final phase nukes was interesting because it was set up. You know what a skiff is. This was set up one step up above a skiff, where they protected those secrets, and they had some components in there that can't even go down that road. But
No, I love it. I'm super curious, but I know not to ask those questions.
Yeah, EOD is interesting because when you graduate EOD school, you just know enough to be a little safe. It's the follow-on training and your partner that you get paired with that really bring home some of the technical training. We go to Joint Nukes, which is in Albuquerque, the Defense Nuclear Weapons School. You literally sit there with a professor that invented part of the nuclear warhead, and they show you how to take it apart, and they show you how to put it back together and what components are dangerous. And if this thing smashes into the ground, which components you got to recover. We did live agent chemical biological training up in Canada with everything from botulinum toxin to VX to mustard gas. I mean, you name it. We had some live agent right there in front of us. Gosh, there's a dozen other schools that I went to. High speed driving, a race car school. That one was really fun. A lot of shooting.
Yeah, how did you get into that one? How does an EOD tech in a bomb suit need high speed driving? I want to go. How you guys finagle that one?
Well, we look at it like this. In the States, we have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with local police departments. And I've gone on bank robbery calls. I've gone on hostage negotiation missions, and our trucks have lights and sirens. So when the police call and you got to roll out, they'll give you a police escort and you'll drive a response truck 110 miles an hour down 95. Maybe.
What? Maybe, hypothetically, right?
Yeah.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Yeah, it was that one was cool. The one that I really thought was interesting, and I understand it's since been closed, was they taught us how to break into houses, break through security systems. And the reasoning was this was during the school was put together during the Cold War, and they figured if somebody's going to steal a nuclear weapon, they're going to put it behind a security system. It's not just going to be a lock and a chain. So we need to teach somebody how to get past motion detectors, passive infrared, active infrared, laser, tremble switches. I mean, the entire gamut. And yeah, this was some Mission Impossible stuff, brother.
Yeah, it's like Mission Impossible combined with like The Rock.
They went over the top for the school. So you go to this airplane hangar in an unnamed location, and you go inside, and there's an apartment complex inside of this airplane hangar, and they got your workbench here with all your tools, and they basically say, all right, the alarm system is on. You have to get to this floor in this room, and to do it, use your training. So we were literally cutting holes in walls, doing wire attack, trying to beat past the sensors and shut them down and stuff. And at the end of the course, after you get past it, you learn the lessons that they're trying to impart. Construction team comes back in, reassembles the house, because we're knocking gigantic holes in walls. I mean, we're looking at 190-pound guys trying to get through into a hole in the wall. It's not going to be, tiny. But yeah,
Yeah, you're like the Kool-Aid man fighting your way into a wall, right? And blasting your way in, and then in a bomb suit, no less.
And if you violated a penalty, which means the security alarm was going off, there's a big, huge red spinny like disco light that would go on and a huge siren, and you would have to mark up on the board how many times you got your team killed. So it was kind of it was kind of a competitive thing too, because you'd have two teams in the two apartments at the same time, and you're trying to compete with who's going to get in there first. So you're trying to keep that technical edge, but you're also under a little bit of pressure to try to win the day.
Oh, wow. I love this. And again, like it's teaching you guys to be very dynamic problem solvers all the time. Like I could only imagine the things that they would lay in front of you, and you just have to figure it out.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. One thing that comes up over and over on this show: guys who spent years in uniform get out, and the next fight is building something of their own. And almost every time, the hard part isn't the idea, it's everything around it. Building a site, figuring out payments, all the stuff that has nothing to do with why they wanted to start in the first place. That's the gap that Shopify fills. Their templates and AI tools get a site up fast, no coding required, so it actually looks real from day one, not like something half-built. Checkout is built to convert, and returning customers can check out in a single click. And if you get stuck, Shopify's built-in AI assistant, Sidekick, is there to help you troubleshoot and keep moving instead of stalling out. Shopify runs everything from Mattel and Gymshark down to someone launching their very first store this week. All you need is the idea. Shopify handles the rest. Start your free trial at shopify.com/combat story. That's shopify.com/combat story. And now, back to our show.
Like, I think that kind of like inculcates a person with like this bias for action. How did that affect you? So just fast forward for a second. You mentioned that became part of your life. How have you seen that that's impacted the way that you live your day-to-day life?
Yeah, because it was abruptly taken away from me. I got hit in December of 2006. I fortunately I was able to stay with our deployment and just be inside the wire running operations. I got to stay with my crew. But then when I left and got to the States and I saw a real doctor, which I should have done in the first place, that was basically it. They diagnosed me with a laundry list of things that were physical and, gave me the opportunity to get out of the Marine Corps. So it abruptly ended. That level of like nonstop adrenaline, flight or fight, the cortisol levels, the amount of stress. When you just rip that away from somebody, you take it away, it's got an impact. And I couldn't really explain and put into words what that impact was. And I started doing dangerous things. To be absolutely frank and honest with your audience, I started looking for things that were dangerous or really hard to do. There was and it's still going on. There's an obstacle course race called the Tough Mudder. And the Tough Mudder course is like 12 miles long, 30 obstacles, super insane hard. There's fire obstacles and electrocution and all this stuff. And I signed up for it as quickly as I could get, my sweet credit card into the website. And then I signed up for another one and was going out and looking for challenges. I joined a fight club, which was way out of my character. I'm not a violent person. I'm capable of violence, but I'm not a violent person. So like trying to rechannel or redirect that into stuff that was equally as hard or dangerous, was also, kind of consuming a lot of energy, a lot of time that I could have been doing things that had a little bit more of a elegant outcome than going and beating myself up, like physically beating it kind of realized that, years later. With my wife, she had pushed me into getting some therapy and getting some talk therapy. And I was kind of working through that kind of stuff. I was also having some problems with traumatic brain injury, with reading and word recognition and cognition and stuff. So I just kind of changed the dial from hard physical things to let's do some hard mental things, and decided to go re-up and get back into school, and went to George Washington. I was like, if I'm going to push myself and challenge myself, I'm just going to lean into it 100% and go to grad school. And that kind of started me on a much different journey, in a good one, in a good positive direction.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. It's one of the things that I would say kind of one of our shadow missions in this show is to also talk about, uh, expose a little bit about ourselves. Is, I think, without being too preachy, I think that a lot of times we live life on a highlight reel with social media. And when we don't talk about moments when we've fallen on our face, when we don't talk about moments that we had to get back up, what we're doing is not helping the next generation. What I don't want them to do is see the first time that they experience failure to think that that's it, right? And so I love hearing stories of guys who have like gone down a bad path, myself included, and say, okay, we can't do this anymore. We got to be able to change that. I really do appreciate you opening up about that.
Yeah.
So, if I may, so now you are after you finish schooling, this is probably late 90s or mid 90s?
No. This was 2007 was when I left the Marine Corps. Or are you talking high school?
Wait, no. So when you finish EOD school.
Oh yeah, finished EOD school was 2 months after 9/11. I was there for 9/11. I was on a security hold, and the base got shut down, and everybody got kind of ushered into a formation. The commander was there, and he told us what was going on, and they sent everybody either back to the barracks or to their house out in town. And I got my security clearance wildly quickly after that, as did everybody else. It was like, oh my God, imagine that. So I went off to my first duty station. This is an interesting one. My first duty station I volunteered to go to because my brother was there. He was in the Marine Corps also. And it was the Marine Corps Chemical Biological Incident Response Force. Are you familiar with that?
God, you two are, no, but you guys sound like a glutton for punishment and two people I don't want to mess with the amount of information you guys have. My goodness.
Yeah, so they stood up this unit right after the Tokyo sarin gas attacks, which I was actually in Japan for, by the way. Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So they stood up this unit at Camp Lejeune called the Chemical Biological Incident Response Force. And it was just basically, I call it what it is. It was basically a working party where guys would learn, mass decontamination, mass triage. We had some corpsmen that were there. And then the biological weapons started increasing in the United States. Anthrax at Senator Dashill's office, a couple other things like that. So the Commandant of the Marine Corps moved this group of Marines up to where EOD school actually used to be in Maryland, right off the Beltway. And they established this force in readiness that was ready to go to DC in case of the release or the potential release of a weapon of mass destruction. And our first mission, my first mission as an EOD technician, was actually going into Senator Dashill's office and cleaning up anthrax.
What? Yeah, you're not allowed to gloss over this one, my friend. I am sorry. I gotta know more.
Yeah, the company that got called to clean up the anthrax, they just couldn't handle it. I wouldn't say they were a mom and pop company, but to decontaminate the entire Senate Hart building, basically they blocked everything off with plastic sheets and flooded the building with chlorine gas. But Senator Dashiell wasn't happy enough with that because his was ground zero for the anthrax. They wanted to really, really clean his room thoroughly. And when I say clean, I mean rip out everything from the ceiling tiles to the carpet, put it into small bags, and destroy it with the EPA. So that was essentially our mission. We had 90 Marines that went in there, full service A or level A, which is that total encapsulated, ET suit with the SCBA on there. And
Wait, so this is this is for dealing with CBR, so chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear, right? So you have like a spacesuit on now?
Yeah. So the level A suit is a total encapsulated suit where you're around supplied air on the inside. So like a fireman's pack, and you got this positive pressure suit, and it only lasts for about 45 minutes because we wanted to be as protective as possible. You go in there for 45 minutes. Some guys had the jaws of life, Sawzall. We had sledgehammers. We were just destroying the entire office, bagging everything up and bringing it out in these huge overwraps for the EPA to get rid of.
That's fantastic. I'm like floored because you're right. So I was, young when that happened, probably high school or whatever it is, when the anthrax, I remember got like in an envelope or something like that to the office. And so you kind of like hear about it, but I'd never actually thought about like the cleanup for that. And it's so crazy to think that like you were the dude, like one of the 90 dudes that are in there with like a Sawzall, right? Just ripping this guy's office apart. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Holy crap, man.
You never really think about how you're going to decontaminate a Xerox machine or rip apart a soda machine. So a senator's office isn't like my 200 square feet here in my studio. A senator's office is, he's got a huge office. There's a reception area, a coffee break, 3 bathrooms, a locker room. I mean, we had to do that entire space. We were there. I think we were there the better part of like 3 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. And we basically lived at that building. We had food brought in, MREs brought in, and
Yeah, I like how to clarify that.
it was just around the clock. I think they actually got a battle ribbon for that. I can't remember which one it was, but yeah, they got some acknowledgement for that. They're still there. It's they pre-position for things like the State of the Union or presidential addresses, big, huge events. The guys will pre-position just in case there's a release.
Wow. And so that stood up right before, or you said stood up 9/11-ish, right? And then has been in maintenance ever since. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Again, it totally makes sense now in hindsight. You're like, with the potential threats and things like that, the high fidelity locations and moments, why not having a crack team of EOD professionals on standby? Seems common sense.
Oh, these were we had we had 8 EOD techs at the unit, and the rest, it was about 300 Marines, and they were everything from infantry to crash fire rescue. We had corpsmen, we had a logistics section, and we had guys that were 18, 19 years old that were trained up on using a flame chromatograph mass spectrometer van to detect chemicals that were downrange. I'm talking like laboratory equipment that you would see in the likes of Purdue, that 18 and 19-year-olds are doing high level chemistry and nailing it every time.
And so you mentioned of this large unit, there's only, you said 8 or 9 actual EOD techs, and then the rest of them are kind of just a hodgepodge of, I'm sure that there's chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear guys there, obviously. But it's interesting to see that not necessarily the hierarchy, but the way that the jobs and the bill descriptions were kind of lined out in there. So it's like one of many solving a collective problem.
That's right. Yeah, and the unit was there for the 2 missions pre-deploy to get ahead of an incident, and then the other mission was a rescue kind of post release type mission, right? So these are guys that are trained to go downrange in a non-permissive environment where there's been a release, wearing their protective equipment and pulling bodies out, setting up a triage. They do a decontamination line. We had the only corpsmen that were trained on working in a non-permissive environment downrange. These guys were even coming up. You're going to be proud as a Marine. You're going to be proud because these guys were even coming up with tools that wound up changing medicine. So if you go downrange and you're in a non-permissive environment and you're starting to use a breathing bag on a person that's down, well, now you're just forcing more gas and poison air into their lungs. So our corpsman actually invented a gas mask filter system for those downrange tools and other ways to help throughout a triage. If there's, mass wound damage, mass trauma, how they would clean it and decon it properly. They were working with some chemical companies that did some really cool stuff for decon and decontamination lotions and fluids. It was a very dynamic unit. A lot of really smart people there.
Wow. Man, that's fantastic to hear. That's fantastic, man. I love that. How long were you at that unit for? And then where did you transfer to afterwards?
I did 3 years of that unit and then went down to Quantico. And Quantico was an interesting unit. They were a base unit, so they responded to the general area outside of Quantico. We went on some calls that were pretty far away, but generally that unit was there for the runway because Quantico houses the president's helicopter. We're also there for potential anti-terrorism, force protection type stuff. Quantico had a lot of generals, and they needed a bomb squad just in case, there were some threats against it.
You've mentioned other calls and outside locations. Is there any integration with local law enforcement as a Marine on Quantico? Do you get called to civilian things? And can you detail some of those things during this time period specifically?
Yeah, man, absolutely. So Quantico, we had a unique team that we were fully decked out. We had the robots, we had the suits, we had the money for tools, the response truck, and we helped out and responded all the way through King George and then as far down as south as North Carolina. Because of our proximity to DC, we did respond up there if it was necessary. Now, a lot of people don't know the Secret Service, they don't have their own bomb squad. So they use military. They give us the suits, we get their credentials, we get the lapel pin and everything. So we did a lot of Secret Service ops with the president, foreign dignitaries, things like that. And in supporting some of the police and some of the local emergency calls that they would get, we went on bank robberies where a suspicious device was left on the counter. We would do drug interdictions where they would go out into a field and potentially encounter booby traps. I know our unit, our 8-man team, I wasn't on it at the time, had done hostage negotiations that were there, not too far offside of base. So we were kept pretty busy. We would get eventually, every once in a while, you'd get some old dynamite that was found in grandpa's shed or even pipe bombs. We'd get domestic disturbance calls every once in a while for pipe bombs and explosive devices. It was one of the reasons why I liked the job so much. You never knew what you were coming into when you went to work that day.
That's what it sounds like, is you're like, well, what's a mundane Tuesday look like to you?
Yeah.
There isn't a such thing as a mundane Tuesday. The problem that you get introduced to every single day is completely different. That's fascinating.
Yeah, there's no op tempo for what we did. And it was very up and down. You could go 2 or 3 months where we didn't do anything at all, no calls, no responses. Our training was done, our collateral duties we were caught up on. So basically we'd sit around the shop and we'd PT a lot. We'd eat a lot of pizza. we had duty. So we had a duty room with a TV and some video games and hang out with each other. And, it was just a great time to have some camaraderie. And then all of a sudden you get a call, and then those calls wouldn't stop for like 3 weeks. You'd be like, oh my God, it's,
So it's like total feast and famine, right? As you go through that.
and it didn't matter the time of day either. You get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, police department served a search warrant on a house and they found some explosives or something. We were going out. So it was fun like that because it kept us on our toes.
Well, and it seems like it's an environment that is continually reinforcing training. You get to see thousands of repetitions before you ever get a call when you're overseas, in Iraq or Afghanistan. It's fascinating to see the integration piece.
It is. And living in a historic area like I did in Northern Virginia, we got to see a lot of history too. I've gotten calls for cannonballs for the Revolutionary War. One of the oldest pieces of ordnance that I physically got my hands on was brought up by an archaeology team from, I think they were from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where Jordan went to college. And the archaeology team had pulled up a bunch of reef off of the coast of North Carolina over there by Cape Hatteras. And they brought it into the shop. I was at Cherry Point doing training, and they brought it into the shop. And sure enough, after all the biological material had been removed, we had cannonballs, we had cannons, we had brass side plates and muskets, and we drilled into one of these cannonballs, and sure enough, we were able to dump out some black powder. Now, we did it remotely, we did it safely with some special tools that we had, but after they had discovered what the ship was, we had the black powder and we brought it out to the range and we blew it up. It was still good, it was still viable. We found out that it was the Queen Anne's Revenge. It was Blackbeard's pirate ship.
What?
Yeah. I blew up some of Blackbeard's black powder.
It was okay. So things I learned today, right, was that I didn't know that cannonballs were anything other than like a big lead like ball. And it totally makes sense that they would have some sort of incendiary device inside of it because of what it evolved to later on. But on the range, what kind of effect did it have? Did it have some sort of spalling? Did it have some sort of like, was it just fire, or did it have something that you're like, okay, this could actually, do some damage if it hit and ignited?
It was devastating. They had a few different types of cannonballs. The big ones that you would, that are synonymous with being on TV, like the 16-inchers. Those could be fired out of the bigger cannons on the front of ships. And inside they would put black powder, but they would also put small lead balls inside of it. So it would be almost like a claymore type of
like
when it blew up. They would load it with nails and chain and anything that they had that could be fragmentation. The smaller ones were also filled with black powder, and they had fuses on them that were probably a lot more advanced than you would think. They would have brass fuses on there that would have literally a spiral shape fuse well that they would fill with black powder and basically beeswax. So when the ball was launched out of the cannon, it would catch that beeswax and that little bit of black powder on fire, and it would go down inside of the cannonball, and then they could set off based off of that when it would blow up based on time and how much they packed into that little fuse well. They had some pretty fundamental technology for powder train time fuses and stuff like that, but it was still dangerous as hell. It was, gosh, tearing people apart, man. It was brutal stuff.
Dang, I never even thought like a total fuse thing. And it's it's an initiated fuse that once it's like a time fuse that we would use on anything else in a mortar or an artillery projectile now. And it had to originate somewhere. I for some reason, I've just never conceptualized that. That's fantastic.
Here's another mission. And as a Marine, you're really going to appreciate this one. When I was at Quantico, the public affairs officer was invited to go out to Bellewood, France. And yeah, Bellewood, France. And he was invited by the caretaker of the property who's about my age, and he went out with a metal detector, and he found grenades and landmines and Mills bombs and all sorts of ordnance. And he brought it back to his farm, and he bought some Jane's manuals off of eBay, and he cut all of these things in half. It's insane to me. He picked the explosives out with a little like wooden tongue depressor, and he put them in this beautiful museum. And he invited the commandant there for, I think it was 215 year or 205 year Marine Corps birthday. And the PAO was like, "Oh my God, there's a lot of ordnance in here. We need to get some other." Look at this. The guy had cataloged like 300 pieces of ordnance. So they sent me and my partner there. We had no render safe capacity. We weren't allowed to, to disarm something, if you will. But we had our portable X-ray system with us, and had a free trip to Bellawood to certify that all of the ordnance that was found out on Bellawood battlefield was inert. And it's in his library, and you can go there now. The guy's got a beautiful museum, and I've got a plaque with me and my partner's name hanging right up in the middle, just tagging the crap out of it.
Dude, that is absolutely fantastic. So, okay, now for any of the non-Marine listeners, Belleau Woods to us is hallowed ground. It is really where the Marine Corps, I think, was able to, place itself in, the history books for the United States. And very, towards the end of the First World War, there was the 5th and 6th Marine Regiments that fought in there, hence the French Forager. And Bellawood has something called Devil Dog Fountain.
Yeah.
And there's this amazing legacy that this fountain stayed, it was on this old like chateau, if you will. And the fountain was part of the chateau, and it had an English bulldog, or for French.
It's a big mastiff, and most of it's covered up with like this funky moss, and it's still dribbling, and you got to go get a drink, bro.
No way. So the pilgrimage for every Marine out there, our pilgrimage is to go to Devil Dog Fountain and drink from the same fountain that the Marines of Bellawood. Take me through your experience of being able to walk through Bellawood.
It was like you said, hollow ground. And when the guy met us there, we drove from Paris up through northern France, through the Champs-Élysées, trying to find. Now, this was when MapQuest was a thing, so we have directions. And nobody speaks English. So we finally found the place, and this young guy walks up, and he's like, "My name is Gilles," and he introduces himself. And I'm just looking around this guy's property, and this is like 1700s French barn that is being held together with just love and hope, and a lot of vines crawling up the side of it. And he's like, "The museum is this way." And he brings us up to this door that is got brass hinges. It's shiny. It kind of reminds me of the door to like Narnia. Like you're like, there's something cool on the other side of this door. And sure enough, man, we open up the door, and this guy's got Smithsonian quality cabinets and uniforms on the wall, and the ordnance in there. He's got mess kits that he found, stories from troops that he like tracked through the war past Bellawood into their next battle and stuff. It was hallowed ground, but it was also an opportunity for me to experience that history and like really feel the significance and the weight of that battlefield. Because in my head, and you might be like me, but in my head, I built Bellawood up to be this like gigantic battlefield stretching hundreds of acres, where there was area for cover and concealment. And it wasn't anything like it. It's smaller than a football field, and it's got some basic structure to it and some big boulders. But aside from that, our Marines were caught out in the open on a tiny little piece of real estate, and being able to fight through that and get that nickname and the German soldiers' respect, that kind of cascaded through, the fighting and the morale of the Marines there. It wound up being published in newspapers, the tenacity of the warriors that we had out on the battlefield. It was cool. It was just living part of history. You know how that feels.
Dude, it's so great. Anytime the two Marines can talk about Bellawood, we just like, I don't know, we kind of like fangirl over it, right? Like it's just this amazing place to us. And remember, you can still see some of the trenches, right? Some of the gun positions that were there. And you're looking at these Marines and you're wondering what was going through their mind, what they were fighting. I mean, every inch of ground was fought and lost and retaken, over a month. But what I found super different about there that was different for me than any other place that I've been. One, obviously, there's like a visceral connection to the Marines, specifically being a Marine within the 5th Marine Regiment, but also the way, like the reverence that the French in the region still hold Marines. There is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm right on this, but the cemetery that is there, which I highly recommend people go to, but it's considered American soil. Like if I'm not mistaken, the French government gave that soil to the United States because, the next city directly south of Bella Wood, right within a 30-minute drive today, is Paris. And Paris was next to fall, and the Marines coming in to be able to stop that gap, hold the line. For us, we believe it helped turn the tide of the war. And more importantly, for the French citizens in the Bello region, it was just anytime that I said the word Marine, their eyes would light up and they'd be like, because I was lost, like trying to find my way there. And yeah, like any self-respecting Marine, I got lost trying to find this place. And you say the word Marine and their eyes light up and they go, oh, come, here, come, let me show you the fountain. Let me bring this to you, because they still have this pride of Marines themselves, unlike any place I've been to on the planet. And you got to go there and oh my God, I'm so jealous of you.
that I'm glad you brought up the graveyard, because I had noticed something there and it was profound and it stuck with me. And every time I talk about Bella, when I talk about that graveyard, because short of where you're talking about is that huge monument to World War I, but it was called World War, or the World War, and it was the World War monument. And in the graveyard that's almost lateral to it that you could walk through is you've got the headstones and you have the crosses, but then you also have the Jewish Stars of David, and then you have some of the German soldiers that are buried there right next to us. Like, how far of a disconnect were we between World War I and World War II, where we went from fighting side by side with the Germans and being buried in the same graves as to where we were at come World War II? It was just really, really a strong impact that had on me, because it spoke to just human nature and how wildly things could devolve so quickly.
The most poignant moments for me were on the fringes of the cemetery itself. They had a number of graves that said, whose name is known but only to God.
Yeah.
And that hurt.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think of our Marines, our soldiers, people that we had served with, and for a family to never know and just to assume that was, or to find a Marine or a soldier there and not know who the person was, it just spoke to the type of war and the carnage that those Marines saw. And I think really ties back to my love of the Corps and this lineage that you and I are a part of.
Yeah, we're blessed. It's definitely something you're a part of, not something that you observe.
That's very well said. Very well said. So, okay, now take me back from this incredibly awesome trip that you had to Bella Wood. Take me back to the United States, and where are you at?
Still at Quantico, and I just got orders over to Japan as kind of a backfill for a spot that got opened up to get deployed to Iraq.
So did you go to Okinawa or Iwakuni?
Okinawa. This was a platoon, which is now EOD company in northern Okinawa. I think it was at Butler. It's been a long time.
Okay.
I think we're at Butler. Yeah.
Yep. So there's Camp Hansen, and then Camp Schwab is where Recon and EOD company, with the northernmost base, right?
I think it could have been Camp Schwab. It's been, like I said, it's been a while, and I only hung around there for the better part of about 2 weeks, and most of that was gunny time, where I'm going to go get my crap from supply, go check into the unit, and we're deploying. So I wasn't even really like given a barracks room. I was in transient barracks. My stuff got packed up and put away, and it was basically like, hey, welcome to the team. Here's all the Marines. Get to know them. We're leaving in 2 weeks. I already did the pre-deployment training in the States because we knew it was coming. So I got to do pre-deployment training And basically all my stuff was issued to me and we were kicked out the door to go to Iraq.
And what year was this?
That was 2006. From a leadership perspective, that sucks because I was a gunnery sergeant and I needed to get to know my guys. And having 2 weeks to get to know somebody while you're doing all of the workups and everything is not enough time. I literally learned my guys under fire. And that sucked from a leadership position.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the trial by fire, and getting to learn a person's personality. So, okay, now 2006, you and what eventually becomes Third EOD Company goes over to Iraq. Where did you guys go into in Iraq?
We landed in Fallujah, but I was deployed out further to Al Anbar area. My little area that we covered was Habaniya, which was part of MNF West. And Habaniya was kind of like a little sleepy town, but it was sandwiched in between two strong fighting forces, and they were having an IED battle with each other on top of us. So we were getting between 12 and 15 calls a day in a 24-hour period, and really the op tempo, it didn't stop. It stayed consistent. The wintertime months, we might reduce the call volume to maybe like 5 to 10, but on a regular basis, we were getting 15, 20 calls every 24 hours, and we were working in 2-man teams. So I would do 2 days on, and then my right seat would do 2 days on, and we could have 2 days off. But 2 days off doesn't mean I was at the swimming pool, you know? And a lot of people don't realize that. They're like, oh, you got 2 days off? Well, 2 days off to reconstitute, build all my explosive charges, get my weapon ready, clean my guns, get myself nutrition, maybe exercise if it's possible, hydrate, fix my feet, because 2 days on duty, you're not taking a shower. You're like running and gunning for 2 days straight.
And you guys were moving from problem set to problem set in the highest stakes themselves. What months, if you don't mind me digging into, when did you get to Iraq in Habaniya specifically in 06?
I want to say it was June or July.
I was in Habaniya in June of 06 as well. I was with 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines at the time frame.
I was supporting you through 5.
That's what's up, my brother. We were chewing the same dirt, dude, in the same location at the same time. Yeah, man, that's fantastic.
That is small world stuff. So I'm to bring it to even a smaller world. I'm a member at a country club here. I like golf, and my wife and I were coming off the course, and another guy was walking towards me with his wife, and there was a sale in the pro shop. So I looked at this guy I've never met. I was like, well, the women are going to go in there. So you want to go grab a beer with me and we'll go watch the golf? And we wound up talking for like 5 minutes. And we found out we were both on the 611 bridge at the same time in the same gunfight. It was like,
what?
Yeah, he was with 3-5. He was a machine gunner.
No way, dude. That's awesome. Are you serious? And so, like, again, like, war and all that, but like, there's these moments of just like, dude, you're sitting halfway across the country, and here I am having a conversation with a guy that I was on MSR Michigan for the better part of that deployment, snooping and pooping. We were both hunting the same people. And so when I couldn't, shoot an IED emplacer and they got underneath my nose, we called you guys. It's so, I probably provided Overwatch for you at some point out there. My goodness.
There's a real good possibility. I was known when I would go out with my guys, I was known for kind of putting on a little bit of a show in my way that I would operate. I would drive up to a safe area. Now, tell me if you've seen this movie. I would drive up to a safe area, and we would deploy a pound of TNT out each side of the vehicle to blow off basically all of it was like a dust off for a helicopter, and just blow the dust off the side of the road. And then we would jump out of the truck. Our trucks were big armored vehicles, so it didn't even wince at it. And then we would jump out of the vehicles, deploy a bunch of smoke grenades, so nobody saw us poking around looking for IEDs. And then start with the robot. And as soon as the robot went down range, we would start shooting little pen flares at people that are getting too close. It was like a Kiss concert. What I did when I showed up. Things were exploding. There was smoke and flares and fire. is a lot of thermite grenades went out, especially in those reeds that were along the side of the road. I was I was living my dream as a little kid of just being the biggest pyrotechnic in the world.
I could completely imagine that. And we did as grunts, we did appreciate the show every once in a while. A lot of making fun of EOD guys. We always used to joke that we thought you guys were just sitting in those big air conditioned vehicles playing video games, making us wait all day.
Sometimes.
So if you could take me through what happens, within levels of classification, of course, but what from when you guys get the call and you're on Camp Habanilla or TQ, and then all the way out from, to final bang. Can you walk me through that process?
Yeah, so it was real dynamic, and it was always changing because of what the problem would be, or what it was. So our normal handoff, we'd hand off at 7 a.m. and we get a 9 line in. That's like a call for help for some of your listeners. And the 9 line would give us a line of information, where we have to go to, who's going to be the support element, basically who called us, and what are they encountering that they need our help for. So we would get there, do some hookup liaison with whoever was on scene, and start taking a look at the area. Generally, they would have, an idea of where the hazard was within sometimes a few square meters. Sometimes if it was Iraqi army or Iraqi police, it would be more vague about where the thing was. So we'd try to find it with a robot, and generally we would. And then it was just, kind of diagnostic at that point. Like, what are we dealing with? Do we have one of these? Are we going to collect it for evidence? Are we going to, use this charge, or use this tool or this tool? And generally, while we were doing that, we would get another call on the radio for another 9 line. And it would be, all right, this next one is, I don't know, 4,000 clicks away. It's in this area. Here's your support element. So as soon as we're done taking care of one IED, whether it was we decided to destroy it on the spot or disarm it and put it in the truck, whatever, we would have a call for another one. And it would go like that and kind of leapfrog nonstop for the better part of the 48 hours. And it,
My gosh.
once in a while, we get to stop at one of the checkpoints, have some food, have some water, reconstitute, maybe build up our charges. But then it would be, kill the alligator closest to the boat, right? So we would get like 3 or 4 9 lines in a row and be like, all right, so let's try to prioritize these. Who's under fire? Who's taking IDF? Are they doing either one of those? Who's been waiting the longest? So it was kind of like, like I said, the alligator closest to the boat. Let's figure out what the biggest hazard is to our Marines right now and respond to that. And then be en route to the next call, and then to the next call, and the next call. And it was just nonstop. You had to be turned on the entire time. It was a lot of, and you'll appreciate, a lot of rippets, a lot of tobacco, a lot of those little drink packets that had like 350 milligrams of caffeine. Those were good for 48 hours, and then you get back to the house, and do the handoff. You sleep hard. You sleep hard for 6 to 8 hours, and you get up and reconstitute and start all over again.
So first thing is rippets. Still miss those things for some reason. A buddy of mine's retiring in a couple of weeks, and he's special ordered a case of rippets for his retirement.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to try rippets again. But second is, so a little bit more of kind of a heady question here, but this is a very technical job. And you are a technician, a professional in your field who's coming out into a scene that there's massive amounts of different rank structures and different commanders' intents going on. How did you, what does leadership look like in a space where technical expertise often outdoes or supersedes rank? And how did you navigate that?
Man, that's a really good question, because it happened several times where it happened on Michigan more than once. We might have been operating and have a cordon in place that shuts down both sides of the street. And all of a sudden, a flag level officer is driving through on a milk run or something, and they insist that they need to go through the area. And we had to handle that with kid gloves and just, sir, there's a mission going on here. Here's the hazards, and you could potentially get killed. Being real blunt and honest was always, I like the blunt, the bottom line, or what is it, the bluff bottom line up front. if you lead with that in a combat situation is one thing. I wouldn't, lead into a conversation so bluntly with my boss now in corporate America. But most of the senior leadership that I dealt with, they were very accommodating to our mission and understanding that we had a very dynamic challenge. And most of them went out of their way to supply us with the tools and equipment and the understanding that we needed. In the understanding part, it was some of our standards were lax, not because I didn't want my guys shaving and, keeping a high rate haircut, but the op tempo just didn't allow some things where, we had to have a little flexibility. My guys weren't growing beards, but they're also, not ready for an inspection. And supplying us with the 3 Bs, the beans, bullets, and bad guys. I really wanted to have good intel on a regular basis. I wanted to take care of my guys, make sure that they were fed and they were taken care of. And we definitely wanted as much explosives and bullets as possible to bring as much shock and awe as we could to the bad guys. Because we got in firefights, not on a regular basis. We had a pretty lockdown security team, but I didn't want to be hanging out there with less than optimal equipment. And one of the things that they even gave us was one of those really cool, it looks like something straight out of Duke Nukem, that 6-shooter 40 mic.
The MGL, the multiple grenade launcher.
We were rolling with one of those on my truck. So it's like they gave us what we needed. So that was always good.
This episode is brought to you by Bubs Naturals. As I've gotten older, I've noticed recovery takes longer than it used to, and mental clarity isn't as automatic as it once was either. That's why Bubs Naturals creatine monohydrate has become part of my routine. It's not just a bodybuilder thing. It's one of the most researched supplements out there, and for me, it's made a real difference in both athletic performance and staying sharp mentally, especially on the days that run long. Bubs makes it with CreaPure, the gold standard, no junk and no fillers, and it's NSF certified for sport, so I know exactly what I'm putting into my body. They're also a tribute to Navy SEAL Glenn "Bub" Doherty, who gave his life in Benghazi. Bubs gives 10% of its profits to charity in his honor. Live better longer with Bubs Naturals. And Combat Story listeners get an additional 20% off at bubsnaturals.com with the code COMBAT. That's BUBS naturals.com, and make sure to use the code COMBAT and tell them that Combat Story sent you. And now, back to our show.
Okay, so the next question that I have is a lot of around trust. So you guys are working in very, very small teams, super small, super tight. What does trust actually look like when your life depends on the person next to you? And how do you build that trust with somebody else?
A lot of it is philosophy about building trust. I think you do it in the Marine Corps through a very structured way. And I think it's the way that we were shown how to build trust from day one at boot camp, Parris Island, or San Diego, or OCS. And that's by living the core values, doing the thing that you said you're going to do, doing it the best you can, and being a person that others can rely on. And after doing it and being tenacious, because Marines are tenacious about things like integrity, honor, work ethic, challenging ourselves, taking care of our brothers. I think after you live that and people see that you really have adopted those principles in your life, I don't think at that point you're trying to earn anybody's trust anymore. I think you know when you have it. And then I think also there's a certain percentage of people just in life in general, but also they exist in the military, is they know they don't have it. And it's not a person like that that's going to make it through EOD school. That's why we have such a ridiculous vetting process. So we can get rid of the people that we know we're not going to be able to leverage at the time that we're going to be in a crisis or at a time that we're leaving. So
that totally makes sense. It totally makes sense with this idea of, being able to train people to a certain proficiency level with whatever munitions that you have is part of the curriculum. But there's this like intangible, there's this nuance in there is like, is this person going to duck and run and save themselves, or are they going to fully commit to be able to ensure that the team makes it out? And that's very hard to quantify up until that moment. And it's really interesting that you say that your EOD pipeline helps to weed that kind of character out. It's like one of those unwritten, performance metrics that we have inside of skill sets like ours.
Yeah, and EOD, and it might not be true as it was when I was in, but at the time, EOD was also one of the only MOSs that I knew of where at any moment you could say, I'm done. I don't volunteer to do this anymore because I don't think I have what it takes. And out of the entire program, I only knew one guy that did it, and he didn't leave the program with a black eye. We all really appreciated it, and we gave him much respect for realizing that, potentially he's a safety risk and he needs to duck out of the program. So you really have to want to be there to number one, make it through the training. But then when you're an EOD tech, you also really have to want to be there because our standards are higher. We always insist guys have a first class PFT. The training that we go through is high level. It's very neural. You have to be locked in and really sharp the entire time. And if you don't make it, you're going to have a mentor to try to help you out. But there's a big difference between really, really dedicating yourself and people see it as to when you're just kind of a mediocre, I'll see what happens kind of guy. But most of our guys are pretty spring loaded.
I mean, it's really strong, especially as a culture when a person says to you, I think it shows the professionalism of your culture when somebody says, "Hey, I don't have it anymore." And there's not like any kind of pressure. There's not any, I'm sure that the person's gone through a ton on their own, but it says, okay, I understand that, right? I'm not going to put you in a scenario where, I don't know, it just speaks to your guys' culture. Head and shoulders above the rest, man. Hats off. Seriously. That's really cool that you guys do that.
Yeah. It's necessary, I think.
Okay. So I'd like to take you through, or I'd like to have you take us through, a potentially tough moment that you and I have talked about off camera. And is this on the same deployment?
Oh, the getting blown up? Yeah. Yeah, that was on the same deployment. It's not tough for me to talk about anymore. Really. And I know what you mean. So on December 11th in 2006, we're out on a mission and we were going down Twins by Route Nova. You probably know this area pretty well. Well, the area was pretty heavily used by the bad guys for putting in IEDs. Most of the roads were unimproved, so you could just dig a hole in the sand, throw down an IED, cover it up. Nobody would be the wiser. And our mission was to go out there. We were supporting 3-5. Some infantry guys found some ordnance. They looked like a weapons cache, and we're driving out there to go get it. And sure enough, we had to go down this dirt road. Well, the guy that I replaced, his name is Dan Fetter. He told me, if you go down this road, always lead with the MRAP, the big armored truck, because chances are there's going to be an IED down there. So we took his advice. We rolled down there with the MRAP, and sure enough, there was an IED in the middle of the road. It blew up. It was daisy chained, so it was two big 155s that were one next to another. And it blew up underneath my seat, and right behind me was my corpsman's seat. And we got ejected out of our seats. And I hit my head so hard on the roof that I broke my helmet in half, my friggin' Kevlar helmet. He got the same kind of treatment. He took a robot controller to the face. We had another guy from an intel unit that took a robot to the leg. My driver, he got a pretty good shot to the face with a steering wheel. So we were all knocked out. We had gone through training about what will we do in this circumstance, in this situation. So my security guys were in two trucks behind me, just kind of waiting things out. And as we regained consciousness, I got on the radio. I told them that, I did a health check real quick on everybody. Everybody was conscious for the most part. We're ambulatory. And that's when the second part of our second phase of getting hit, was gonna be executed. And that was getting out of the truck and looking for secondary devices, which was something, it was a tactic that the bad guys were using with great success. Is they would target a specific vehicle, blow it up, and then as responders were coming in to triage the vehicle and get the Marines out, they would have a secondary or a tertiary device nearby to blow up and then kill them too. So that was the challenge, right? That was the problem, is get out of the truck with all of this crap all over the ground because they ripped our truck to shreds. You're talking about parts and pieces of vehicle everywhere. Now we're also looking for potentially an IED that's buried in the road, maybe some wires, maybe some key ID features, some snail trails, stuff like that. Fortunately, we didn't find anything. We did find the wires where they ran from our shot hole to a neighboring house in a small village. So our infantry guys, they called us up. By that time, they were already descended down on top of us to provide us security. They went down and tracked down the house, and we started showing signs of some extreme concussions. So we packed up and headed to Fallujah, or not Fallujah, I'm sorry, TQ. From TQ, we flew out. Me and my corpsman did. We flew out to the big hospital up there. We were there for a few days. I was there with the neck thing on and all of this other crap, and I just didn't want to. I didn't see myself leaving. I didn't want to go. I didn't feel like I was as busted up as I was. I think I was still in a little bit of shock, and I was a gunnery sergeant. So I took out all the crap that they had stuck into me. I grabbed some cans out of a locker that I found, and I put myself on a helicopter and flew back to Fallujah. I got a little bit in trouble for that, a little bit of a hand spanking, but I told my master guns, I want to stay here, finish out the trip. If you get a corpsman to take a look at me and just sign off on my release, we'd be good to go. And I'll just finish up the tour. And I did. I wanted to be with my guys. Even if I couldn't leave the wire, I wanted to stay in operations. I helped them out the best I could, advocated them for where I could to give them the support. And fortunately, the rest of our crew made it out of there without any casualties. Well, without losing anybody. We had a few guys that got popped, but we didn't send anybody home in a box.
If I may, this is not a normal response, most Americans would expect. I think that there's kind of an understanding that you've been wounded, massively injured, concussion, C-spine, all that kind of stuff. You had your kind of ticket out of there. You had, if you would have just continued down that pathway, you would have been sent home and been free from the war. What drove you back?
The deployment before mine, they lost a lot of guys. They lost 5 guys, which was devastating. To put it in perspective, folks, the entire EOD program was at that time only about 300 people. And that small of an organization, you get to know everybody. You might not be beer drinking buddies, but you've trained together, you know each other, you at least know each other by name. So when you lose 5 guys in such a small organization, it really takes its toll. And I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be away from there and hear that one of my guys got injured or killed. I thought I would be best serving my team if I stayed there in solidarity with them, even if it was just getting them, Rippets and and Otis Spunkmeyer muffins, or helping them get better explosives, better bang, or better weapons, or whatever. I was just going to be an advocate and do everything I could to make sure that they were taken care of.
I think that really leads back into the trust for me personally, and that's a currency that we use. What I say a lot of times is that the values of honor, courage, and commitment are a currency to us, and those are things that matter to Marines. I'm really thankful that you went back, and I'm sure your team was as well. You were their leader, right? You were their gunny, and I applaud you for making that decision. That's really cool.
Appreciate it, brother. I wouldn't have changed it ever again. It'd be the same decision I always make.
You're a giant among men, my friend. So take me through the rest of the deployment. So now you've kind of got this back and forth. You are probably 3 or 4 months into your deployment now, and you've reached the back half. Was it a 7-month deployment that you guys were on?
Yeah, it was. And we were on the back end, the backslide of it. This was now right around, because that was on December 11th. This was right around January-ish where I got back. Cooler weather was prevailing, and the bad guys weren't coming out nearly as often. Well, it was 15 to 20 calls. Now it's shrunk down to between 5 and 10 calls a day. We did have a couple really close calls where a couple of our guys got their bell rung pretty hard, but for the most part, we had a really successful deployment. We were capturing a lot of enemy intel, which was great, sending a lot of that stuff back to the United States. We were starting to roll with a weapons intelligence team, which is kind of some intel guys that would collect some biometrics and stuff like that to hopefully link together to the bombers that were affecting our area. And it went smoother. We did, like I said, we had a couple close calls, but we the camaraderie and the esprit de corps that we had with our teams, even though we're kind of piecemealed out around the area, was amazing. It was really strong. I'm still in touch with, I would say, 80% of our deployment. I see them on a regular basis. I saw my boys when I was coming to visit you. I just called them up for a cigar and some beers.
Dude, that's fantastic. So I think from the science side, I'm kind of interested in the components of a bomb, and specifically components of a bomb that we saw in Iraq at that time frame. Can you explain a little bit of the components of what actually makes it, without going in any kind of classification or helping anyone make bombs at home, but also a function of getting into the cat and mouse game that you alluded to before? I think what I've said is that the Mujahideen and the Taliban that we fought were limited by their creativity and their resources. Can you explain a little bit of the things that you guys encountered and how you fought back in that cat and mouse game?
Yeah, so the explosives part wasn't as interesting as the components that they would use to make the explosives detonate. So just a basic elementary lesson is a bomb has got a couple components. One is the explosives. That's your TNT, kind of base explosives. Then you have your container, your bomb shell. That's the metal, container that it goes into. And whether or not it's a hand grenade, a landmine, a bomb that's dropped from a plane, they all basically work the same way. There's a fuse, some type of fusing mechanism that it has to function to make the big explosive charge blow up. Now, when you take that away, it's relatively safe. You could shoot a bomb with a gun and nothing's going to happen, because the explosives in there are somewhat insensitive. It was the way that the bad guys were making the explosives, the big charge of explosives blow up. That was the cat and mouse game. Because even at the most rudimentary, easiest entry level way to make explosives blow up is just having some long wires where they would hook it up to a power source. And at the other end, they would have the detonator inside of the bomb, the big explosive container. And they would literally touch the wires to a battery terminal and make the explosives blow up by us. That was one of the easiest and most prevalent ways that they were doing it in our area, which made it hyper dangerous for us because we would have to put ourselves between the bomber and the bomb to cut the wire somewhere in the middle, which opened us up for ambushes and sneak attacks and secondary devices, landmines along the way, things like that. And then you would have time devices. They got pretty good at using timers that they would break out of cars. Sometimes they would use washing machine timers. They must have gotten like an order of 1 million washing machine timers from Temu because they were all over the battlefield. I never even knew what a washing machine timer was or what it looked like until I went to Iraq. And they would use those pretty consistently and some other very, very MacGyver-like ways to make, a time device. I've seen cell phones used, not as prevalently because they're wildly expensive. They've used some other things.
People hear bomb tech and they think of the movies, right? And I know we've covered a little bit of this thing, but I want to know in Iraq, what does this process like when the robot has done its thing and the robot can't solve it? Johnny Five's what we used to call it when we would see it running around. What is the reality of this like when you walk up to a bomb and you're now suited up? I'm sure it's pretty rare, but take me through the headspace. What problem are you trying to solve? What are you looking for? Take me through that entire process because you guys are crazy and I want to know why.
All right. So let me first break a stereotype is we did not very often wear the bomb suit in Iraq. My entire time, over 200 combat missions, I never put the bomb suit on because we had to be quick. We had to be nimble. We had snipers in the area. So when we got to the point where we exhausted all of our tools and resources, we always had a backup. We always had a contingency plan on top of a contingency plan. And without getting into some very specific tool uses and how we would do things, because I just frankly, I can't, we would do things as remotely as possible. And sometimes remotely means throwing a rope with a grappling hook on the end of it across long distances and pulling it in to see if you could uproot some command wires, or, simply rolling a charge at what you think is an IED. We had come up with a system where we had water bottles that we would fill with a small amount of explosives and some water. And because of the hydrodynamics of water and explosives, when you blow this thing up, it creates, a ripping effect. So we would roll these water bottle charges to try to rip apart components, open up rice bags, sever wires. So we would try to, 99% of the time, we would come up with a way to remotely do something, even if it was something as like elementary as pulling a rope with some explosives on the end of it as close to the hazard as possible by walking the long way around and laying down the rope. And you might be getting shot at, but you're running, man. You know exactly. You've done this a dozen times. And it's like, Johnny, which was funny because that's one of my Marines. His name was Johnny. Johnny, go get the rope. You know what to do. And he just one of my favorite quotes that he actually had, and we kept a little quote log, was we rolled up to an Army CP, and they had an IED that was out there, and we knew it had some command wire. And Johnny jumped out of the truck, and the captain that was out there was like, "Where are you going? What are you doing? Are you going to bring his scissors?" And he grabbed his trauma shears. He said, "All I need is a good pair of scissors and some motivation, sir. I got this." And ran out there, cut the command wire, ran back, and we're done with the problem.
Dude, you guys are crazy. Absolutely crazy. Oh, man. Well, I do love that. And again, it's trying to solve the problem in the most efficient way possible. And I really think it actually speaks to it is like, if we're wearing a bomb suit, we have exhausted a lot of other resources before we go to that, of putting a human at that point of where no matter what, they're going to get pretty hurt if this thing goes wrong. Wow. I mean, just absolutely, pun intended, blown away by this. This is absolutely, incredible to hear about.
I appreciate it.
Okay, so now ending 2007, you've mentioned a couple of, you had put off any kind of medical care. You guys start your transition back from Iraq. What happens then?
Yeah, so my transition back from Iraq was pretty smooth. I mean, we got back to Okinawa. Okinawa is going to take some leave because now I'm supposed to be stationed in Japan. But I took some leave from Okinawa, came back, saw my wife, and as I was just transiting back and forth between base, seeing friends of mine, I had a panic attack, a really bad one. I thought I was having a heart attack. I went to a medical. They checked me in. They started doing tests on me and stuff. And those escalated, and they escalated, and they escalated to where they're basically like, "Look, you're going to stay here. They don't have the facilities over in Japan to handle what you're going through. You have Walter Reed and Bethesda here real close by. So you're going to be able to go to those facilities, and we're just going to change your orders." And that's when I had the rest of my treatment through the rest of my time in the Marine Corps. And I wound up leaving shortly after that.
My goodness. Okay. And so leaving the Marine Corps as a whole, right?
When they gave me my orders to Japan, they had assumed that I was going to reenlist. I was a career Marine at that point. I was a Gunnery Sergeant. I had a great career in EOD, but after getting blown up and getting back to the States and going through all the physical rehab and everything, they basically gave me an ultimatum. You could stay here on medical hold, which will probably take you 2 or 3 years to get out of, or you could take your honorable discharge and we could put you in early for the VA rating system. So they had this program called Benefits Delivery at Discharge. So they would do your full medical evaluation, put all your everything in documentation, and hand it to the VA. So as soon as you walked out the door, you got your VA rating. And I guess I was one of the first ones in that program because it actually worked for me. I was out the better part of maybe 4 or 5 months, and I got my my rating, which was tantamount to a retirement for me anyway.
So from December 11th, from when the IED strike happened, how long was it until you took the uniform off completely?
October of next year. So about 10 months.
It's a pretty fast transition.
Yeah, it was head snapping, but the thing that I had going for me was a friend of mine started a company that was a training company for EOD technicians. And it had grown and grown. And basically what they did is they took EOD guys that got discharged and they married them up with some curriculum. And we would go to the bases and we would do the teaching because we knew that there was a leadership vacuum, right? That kind of existed with the guys being deployed overseas. So we kind of took over that role. That way the guys could use their own equipment. They weren't leaving their friends or family. They were doing their pre-workups and then they would deploy. And because of the length of the war, we did that for about 3 years where I was just on this mobile training team going all around the world. It kept me still involved in EOD, which was important to me. It helped me train the guys and get them prepared because now I could tell them stories like, hey, this happened to me in Iraq. Watch out for this, whatever. And we're still getting intel because we're closely, obviously, working with the government. And then I had an opportunity through there. The FBI opened up a contract to our company, so I got to work at the FBI explosives unit at Quantico for a few years. That was
What was the giggle for? You had a little giggle there about the FBI team. Tell me about that.
It was one of my favorite jobs because all of this evidence would come in from our military guys for aggressors against Americans. And basically, I was a liaison between the military and the Department of Justice because we were using their labs to do like DNA, hair, fiber, trace evidence, fingerprints. I mean, photography, you name it. And I was able to connect the dots between bad guys. So I was like literally putting bad guys in jail by identifying some of this biometrics and evidence, trace evidence, and aligning it with people that were coming into the United States or trying to apply for citizenship or part of their or part of the refugee program. So we would.
What? I mean, what a fascinating way to continue serving and like giving back as well. So like taking all of your expertise from overseas and everything you had learned up until a gunnery sergeant at that point, the it wasn't a stop button. It was a pause for a second, right? And then you found a way to maintain your connection to it and then continue to help the next, group of guys going through and stay totally relevant.
Yeah,
What a smart move.
it was awesome. It was one of my favorite jobs because it was eye opening to the standards that we have at the Department of Justice for tracking down and catching criminals was amazing because we were using some of the technology that they have there was just mind blowing. Some of the tools and methods that they use to track down. I mean, even the smallest amount of a fingerprint on the back of a piece of tape, they were getting DNA off of. It was really, really, it was exciting. One of the areas that I thought was really interesting was a lot of these IEDs were wrapped up really, really heavily with moving tape, that clear cellophane tape. And they had a row of little old ladies at this chemical sink that had, I think it was an acetone wash that was coming out. And basically all they were doing is peeling apart tape from IEDs from Afghanistan and Iraq and peeling it apart and layering it down on pieces of paper so they could get fingerprints off of there from the bomb makers. Every day, 8 hours a day, these little old ladies were just unraveling tape. And then in another room, one of the ladies was taking apart the handles that the moos would use on the handles for the oil jugs for the IEDs that they were bringing out in Afghanistan, and start taking a look at fiber, trace fiber, different dyes that they would use in the textiles and stuff. Yeah, the deep dive that we went into catching bad guys over there has been overlooked by decades. It was something that is still going on right now. That unit hasn't been closed down. It's called TDAC, and they're still using the evidence that we brought back from Iraq and Afghanistan to track down bad guys.
That totally makes sense too, that we would want, because 20 years of war, has led to a lot of development of technologies and tactics and procedures. And so, of course, you want to be, so it was like this total proving ground for ingenuity and resources. And so now that we were on the back end of this kind of thing, it totally makes sense that we had this kind of repository of information that would collect, catalog, and then, synthesize this to every other, component in the EOD sphere. Really, really smart. And I'm really glad I just didn't know, like you said, totally overlooked. It's just not part of my, lexicon, right? I just don't know that's there, but it's really nice to know that we do have, an agency that's still continuing to learn lessons from what we saw overseas.
And the dedication and the tenacity that some of these technicians had, I'm talking about the lab technicians, it's something that I'll never see that level of, I don't think I'll see that level of professional dedication. And I'll give you an example. This is how tenacious this one individual was. One of the IED components that was used in Afghanistan were pressure plates. So basically you have two pieces of cardboard or wood that has some metal contacts in there that were separated with foam. Well, they were getting the foam part from flip-flops that they were cutting apart that they would get at different marketplaces. So as the evidence came in from Afghanistan and made its way through the FBI, this guy was collecting all of these tiny little pieces of foam from flip-flops. And after I think like 5 or 6 years, he finally assembled one out of all found pieces of foam from this war on the other side of the world. He was able to find
what
he was able to find out who the manufacturer was, what market it came from, and sent a intelligence agency to go do a door knock, and wound up finding the supplier out to some of the bad guys that were making IEDs.
I wish that we were in a skiff so we could talk about this a lot more. Well, not anymore. Neither of us have clearances. But my God, that would have been so fun to figure that thing out. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, the guy put together a sandal. It took him like 3 or 4 years, but when he did,
That's huge.
that cracked a huge case open. And it's that level. It's that level of forensics, which forensics haven't changed really wildly that much in 20 years since the advent of DNA. But it's the level of tenacity that these people have to use those tools is what's really impressive to me.
I really love how it's like, when we think of an EOD tech, again, we think of the dude or dudette in a bomb suit, right? And they're like, yanking on wires or cutting things. But it's this whole system of everything that supports that, from arming you with the information, from a dude who spent 3 years building a flip flop so that they could identify the bomb maker or the bomb supplier, all the way to the guy yanking the, or to Johnny running around with a rope, throwing some det cord, around an IED out there. That's fantastic to hear, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It was such a big integral part of the war that it had this cascading effect across so many different disciplines that getting to see the big picture. I don't even know if really, unless you start talking to guys in skiffs about putting targeting packages together, because then there's that next part. What do you do with that information? Well, now you got to take that information and give it to Intel, and they got to put together a targeting package. They got to decide what level of complexity, an attack is going to look like. Do we go attack these guys, or do we put Intel agents in there and just watch them and see if we can connect more dots? It's so layered, man, that getting to be just in the 10% layer of it and seeing a little bit deeper under the covers was just wildly fascinating. It's what keeps me motivated to stay in the community even just a little bit.
Wow. I mean, again, helmets off, right? To that. Absolutely incredible. So my next question really revolves around art. Ironically enough, is when did art start to enter into your life? I know that I'm sitting in my studio with a piece of your artwork that hand drew and created for the show, which will go on our wall proudly for here until forever. And you are also sitting in your art studio with a fantastic painting behind you. But I want to know, where did the art journey come from, and where did it start, and how has it really helped?
Yeah, this was a detour, man, that I never would have thought in a million years I would have taken is down the road of professional artist. So about 2.5 years ago, this was 2023. My son and I were Christmas shopping with my wife, and I've told this story before because it's kind of funny, because it was so unpredicted. So we're out Christmas shopping, and my wife goes into Ross, which is like, 4 or 5 days before Christmas. The place is feral, and I do not want to go in there. So like every strip mall, there's a Michael's, like a craft store. And my son was 10, and I was like, well, we could go in there. When I was a kid, I'd go over there and get model cars and like Mustangs and like little P-51 flyers and stuff. I was like, he can get something, and he won't play video games for the entire Christmas break. So we'll do something like that. And he gravitated towards a painting kit, and he got some paint by number thing. I was like, well, I'm an adult. I don't need paint by numbers. I could.
But you are a Marine.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, clearly, I can figure this out. I got a canvas, and I painted a guy in a bomb suit. It wasn't awesome, but it was. It kind of took me out of my head for a little while because it was kind of cathartic. Whereas it was very process driven. It was step one, you have to do this. Step two, you have to do this. And at the end, if you follow the steps properly, you'll have something that's good. Kind of like EOD. You follow the steps, you'll have a good outcome. Well, in painting and in creating and being creative, it's kind of the same thing. And it's been 2.5 years. I'm kind of an autodidact when it comes to arts, being creative, doing things. I've taught myself a lot. I've taken a couple classes here and there. But my art career, it's taken off organically. I wasn't really looking at it as a business at first. But it wasn't until I actually had a moment that was pretty profound. I made a painting called War Dreams, and it was this guy that was ripping out of his covers. He looks like he was panicked. He was freaking out. And I put it up on social media. And at the time, I might have had like 50 or 60 people that looked at my artwork consistently. And I didn't have a huge following, but I had this female Marine that reached out to me, and she said she connected really, really well with the painting. And we started talking offline on messages. And she had been through some trauma in the military, and now she was a recluse. She was an alcoholic. She hasn't talked to her family in a long time. And I said, you know what? I'm going to paint something for you specifically. Maybe it'll motivate you. But if you connected with this painting, let me see if I could replicate it. So I painted a female, but this was a female warrior, and she had two broadswords, and she was cutting through whatever trauma that she had and pain that she had been delivered to in her life. And I sent it to her. I didn't want anything for it. I just wanted to connect with her. And it wasn't shortly after that kind of her comms went dead for a couple of months. And every once in a while I'd shoot her a message. But then I got a message from her that she had sought therapy. She went through a in-service, like a residential alcohol rehab program. So she had lost comms. She reconnected with her daughter, and she was starting to get out and look for a new job. I was like, all that came from a single painting, and she acknowledged it. She's like, yeah, you were able to put something into words, or take something that I couldn't put into words and put it in the imagery that I understood and I connected it with. And it motivated her enough to change her life, which is, it still kind of gives me goosebumps, that I thought if I could do it for one person, then maybe I could do it for another and another. And it was kind of a self-licking ice cream cone. I would start meeting other vets, people that have gone through trauma and stuff like that, and trying to capture it on canvas or on paper, and have an opportunity to, not relive their experience, because I don't think, you don't want to relive a trauma, but at least reconnect with it and understand that it's in the past, but it's not something that we should just forget, because I think through adversity, there's a lot of lessons that could be learned if a person deals with it the right way. And I think one of the right ways in dealing with it is identifying it first. And you could do that through art.
Wow, what an incredible story. I mean, you never know, man. You may have saved a life, and I think that's what's at the heart of, to me, what EOD does. Is EOD is there to save lives. You are there to protect your brothers and sisters, and I don't think that your mission has changed. I think the medium has changed, and my goodness, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So I think that when you're, so my mother was an artist, plein air, oil and pastels. So I grew up in an artist household. So I'm used to, um, I would say, a little bit more of the flowery language than we're used to inside of the service. I would say a little bit more of an expression, feelings, that kind of stuff. So I was raised in kind of that environment. So I have a very artsy question for you that my mom would be happy, I think. She does listen to these episodes as well.
Great.
Is would you so this is from mom, right? um, do you see art as an expression? Do you see it as processing, or do you see it as translation, specifically with your artwork?
Uh, I think I've been in a position because I like being experimental is that I try a little bit of everything out. In the expressionism or expressionist category, I do that through demonstrating stories that guys have talked to me about of their time in the bomb suit. And I like capturing their story and showing people what it's all about. Uh, the other styles and reasons that you're getting into, I experimented with early on, and whether it was through storytelling or capturing a moment, I think art has the ability to transcend a box, and I think categorically those are boxes, and categorically you're right to try to put them in boxes because you have a lot of different ways that art can make people feel, but I think if you're if you're doing it for the right reason and you're doing it with integrity, self integrity, that you're being true to yourself and what your vision is, I think it kind of transcends buckets. It's out there for anybody's interpretation. What one painting I've done before that can make a person really reflect on a harder time in their life. Another person can look at it and reflect on the time that they got over a hard time in their life. I think this art is, without being too art nerdy, I think it's just very, very personal.
100%, because to me, and I think to a lot of artists, is that it defies um, boundaries. It defines sometimes we try to encapsulate art into words,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know that it needs to. I think art sometimes is just a form of an expression in some way, shape, or form of the human soul, and it captures that in whatever moment that you're feeling. I know that when my mom was painting when I was younger, she said that her artwork was very, very connected to her emotional state at the time. And she can look through her catalog of artwork that she's created and understand what she was thinking or feeling during that time frame. Do you see sometimes the same thing happens to you? Can you catalog your journey through, your last few years
Yeah.
when you look at your old piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I went through a program halfway through my art career, which spans 2.5 years. So I went through a program recently, and it was called Path. And Path is a program up in Boulder Crest, and it's offered in a few more places. I'll just touch on it briefly, but essentially what Path is for guys that have or women that have had some trauma in their life, whether PTSD, war trauma, something in their childhood, just trauma based. And basically the fundamental underpinning is we take the tools that we used in the military where we're hyper vigilant, we're always turned on, we're detail oriented, things like that. Where when we leave the military, people look at that through the lens of now you have PTSD. Well, no, now we just don't have ways that we could apply those tools that we learned in the military that kept us alive. We don't have ways to take those tools and reapply them as a civilian. Well, what this path course does is it rewires your brain to basically take those tools that we had in the military that present as PTSD and use them on a day-to-day basis. And before my time when I went through path and I had a better appreciation and understanding of how I could lean into my military training in for the good of things, I had some really dark artwork. I had things like war dreams. I had a lot of skulls, imagery, things like that. And when I left Path in the Boulder Crest program, it's when I challenged myself to do these 5 bomb suits in 5 days, using charcoal, the same style that you got over your shoulder there. And I connected with people on such a level that I wound up getting over 200 commissions in 2 months.
What?
Yeah, of drawings that are that size that are over your shoulder, and it made its way out of the country. I have people getting a hold of me from Spain and the Ukraine and Canada and Australia. And come May, I've been invited by the Ministry of Defense, invited me over to London to go paint at their Felix Foundation, which is their,
What?
yeah, that's their,
That's huge. Congratulations.
yeah, man. Thank you.
My goodness, man. That is incredible. I'm looking at your artwork right now, and as you mentioned, there is I would say at sometimes kind of Dali-esque undertones inside of it that I can see. Um, and really, I mean, I can see, war dreams in charcoal. I mean, the beautiful, depth, and the vivid imagery on that. A lot of people screaming.
Right.
Why is that?
So one of the things I dealt with that was probably a lot of guys do was rage. And it was almost to the point where I couldn't control it anymore. There's a couple instances where I found myself like physically lashing out at somebody that didn't deserve it. And it wasn't people that you would think of on a day-to-day basis that would be giving you a hard time. It was the lady at the checkout counter at 7-Eleven that wanted to count out her pennies, or it was a guy at Subway that didn't know if you wanted pickles or extra pickles. Yeah, it was just people in everyday situations to where when you're on the hook in Iraq and you're literally running and gunning 24 hours a day with very little downtime, and you're physically plugged into this operations tempo where it's nonstop, nonstop, nonstop. If what you're doing isn't contributing to my success, then you're just holding me up and you can get me killed. It's that type of mental attitude that I had when I came back to the States that was like, all right, the kid that's screaming at the McDonald's is not helping me at all here. It was just driving me crazy. I just either number one, get out of the spot or scream at his mom to, make their kid shut up. It was that type of rage. And I've done talk therapy and exposure therapy. I've done surfing therapy and nature and equine therapy, but I was never able to express to somebody what that rage felt like inside when it would start bubbling up. And the last thing that you could do was to try to control yourself from lashing out and just screaming at somebody, because Marines are good at screaming at people. And I remember what I look like. I'm 290 with tattoos, a big thick neck, and I'm kind of scary looking already. And I know that's wildly intimidating. So trying to keep that rage down and bottled up was one of my biggest challenges. And when I was able to express it through the artwork and show people like, this is how I feel, but all the time, or in these situations, or here's triggers, people were relating with it and been like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like you write rage on a piece of paper, it's 4 letters. It hardly has symbology behind it. But when you show somebody in the color patterns that I use that are just fully lost it and are screaming, that's when people can connect the dots and be like, you know what? I felt like that too. And then we could have conversation about it. And that's when healing begins.
I have nothing to say to that. That was fantastic, my friend. I my own journey, I think, is the same kind of process, is that we're very good at learning how to solve a problem in the service, whatever military service that is, with immediate and massive amounts of violence, generally to solve a problem. When I see inside of the military, one of the ways that we're kind of conditioned to solve a problem is through massive amounts of violence in the shortest amount of time possible. And it's very, very hard because I have learned that's how I solve most of my problems overseas. And it's very weird to transition back to the United States where that's no longer a tool that we can use. And I believe that your art is an exact expression of that, of having like this inner animal wants to solve the problem the way that I've always solved these problems. And I just can't, which creates this negative feedback loop, almost like a ticking time bomb, in some levels. And I love the expression that you have inside of here to really show um, that angst is the way that I would identify that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It actually took a toll on me for a good while. As I was doing these really intense emotional paintings, I started going down and back into the rabbit holes that I was going into, which actually triggered me in a very specific personal incident to go seek path and go actually put in the hard work. And then after Path, doing the bomb suit paintings, I discovered animals and cherries and different opportunities to paint with brighter colors and things that were happy. And now, believe it or not, I've got an entire series that's going on that's just blowing up right now. It's going viral, of little rubber duck paintings that I make that have literally gone out around the world. I think now I'm up to like 69 people or followers in 18 countries. We've logged, I think 70 or 80 individual vacations. And what they are is on on cruise lines, right? If you go on a cruise, you'll find little kids hiding little rubber ducks. And when I was on a cruise with my family here recently, I didn't know about the phenomena, and I'm an artist, so I had some watercolors with me, and I started painting little rubber ducks and sticking them on my door at night, and kids would take them. And I literally saw kids walking around trading these little rubber duck paintings that I made. So when I got home, I decided I'm going to see what I could do and put together an interactive, kind of like a collectible card line with rubber ducks. And man, I've gotten some traction. I actually have a deal in Aruba at a Carnival Cruise Line stop that they're going to start carrying my collectible ducks. I've got a little interact.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's crazy. I got this fun interactive website that it's got an educational and a storytelling component. So when you go to the website, you enter in your information, and then you get to see all of the ducks. They all have backstories. They have favorite quotes and favorite places they visit. And then
this is the greatest thing on the internet I've ever seen.
Your fans are going to love it because it's adult friendly, because it's interesting. And then it also has a kids component. So you could go into a Google map and you could tell them where you found your duck. So let's say you found a duck on a ship in whatever, Aruba. You would put a pin there, but instead of a pin, it would be a duck that would go and mark your place. And then if you roll over the top of the duck, a map comes up that tells you their national flag, of course, their national bird, the type of food they like. And when I send these cards out, people could, socially interact with each other, take a look at where other ducks have gone. And if they find a duck that's been on a different cruise ship, they could literally mark it and put it out on the little website I got and say, hey, I found your duck. It's made it from Jamaica to Nassau.
Dude, that's fantastic.
I've kind of based my storyline. My first one is on the Endless Summer. So Robert the duck and Mike the goose are traveling around the world in search of the perfect pond.
Dude, absolutely, this is fantastic. And I really hope the entire world gets to see this stuff because, again, it's so cool to see the duality of man, right?
Yeah.
Is you have this thing where you are a protector. You are, a person who puts themselves in harm's way, understands how humans can work extremely hard to try to hurt one another, and you choose to stand literally in the blast to save others. Dealing with all that weight and then moving into another part of your life where it seems like you want to convey emotion, at times bring joy, at times show a deeper connection to the emotions that you may feel or other veterans may feel. I think that this is just such an incredible arc. And I'm so proud to know you, right? And go through this little EOD duck. Oh my God, that's the cutest thing I've ever seen. This is fantastic.
I've got the project that I'm working on right now in the duck world is another artist friend of mine is going to Burning Man. I think it's in September. And I've made 5 specific Burning Man ducks that you could only find at Burning Man 2026. And it's going to be little projects like that for collectibles for kids that are like, I got this card deck in Jamaica or Aruba, and it's got those types of cultures that are baked into it that when they exchange it with other people from other cultures, they can explain, where they got the card from, the fun things that they did there, and open up more conversation. Because I think, AJ, I think I just realized that this has literally come back full circle with me, that my desire to join the military was all based around travel. And now I'm doing this huge art project that's all based around travel. It's kind of a self-licking ice cream cone, as you said before.
Right. It's such a profound kind of circle, right? How you've kind of gone through this. Well, I look forward to seeing the Burning Man ducks on your socials. I don't know how much crossover our Combat Story audience has with the Burning Man audience, but if there's a few, maybe they can hunt for it.
We do got a lot of Jeep culture, and ducks cleans up
Yeah, oh yeah.
culture too. So watch out on your Jeeps, because they're hitting Jeeps here real soon too.
Man, I love that. You mentioned that there's a national monument of some sort. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the Marine Corps EOD Association asked me to participate in part of the design for the EOD obelisk. That's going to be a monument that's going in at Quantico, Virginia, at the EOD, or at the Marine Corps Museum. And basically, what it is, if you've ever been to the Marine Corps Museum, there's a track, a walking path that goes all the way around it with certain memorials and monuments. It's kind of like a walking sculpture garden that you'd see at an art museum. And they've asked me to provide a bomb suit drawing that's going to be etched into black marble on the side of the obelisk. And the other side of the obelisk is going to have the EOD badges and a little history of the MOS. And it's going to be generational art for me. It's going to be there for potentially centuries. And it's going to have my name there. And I'm going to be a contributor to a national monument.
To our history as Marines, full circle, coming back from the idea of being at Belleau Wood and seeing the living history there. Now you get to create it, and you get to be able to be part of our lineage and who we are. Like, wow, absolutely out of this world, my friend.
Absolutely blessed. And the group of people that are putting it together are awesome folks. But yeah, to be released soon. I believe it's going to be unveiled in May 2027.
Oh, perfect. That's fantastic. Well, please let us know. We'd love to come out and support in any way that we can, or just be a part of it. Super, super great. As we start to kind of wind down, I have a few kind of, heady type questions for you. So I think looking back, right, how do you think that your time in EOD shaped the way that you saw risk, how you saw fear, and also how you saw control?
I'd never been really risk averse, even going back to when I was a kid. I was always the kid that wanted to first try out the ramp that we made for our BMX bikes to go over, or when it came to surfing, going out and trying to conquer the biggest waves. So I was never been risk averse, climbing trees and just kind of doing those things when you're a kid. Kind of didn't really make me think much of risk. So the EOD, suit up and go down range part, that was more about technical skills for me. I think a lot of EOD guys and bomb squad guys will agree that once you put the suit on, yeah, there's a certain level of fear. But then bravery is just doing something in face of fear. So it's time to just kind of man up and go do your job. But you don't really live with that in that moment. In that moment, you're thinking about going down there, doing the proper reconnaissance, identifying what the hazard is, looking at secondary hazards, looking around you for certain key ID features on the battlefield, things that you could use to your advantage or disadvantage, all of the totality of the scene. And as far as control is concerned, I have a personal mantra, and it's always worked for me really, really well. And it's just to not say no to opportunity, whatever the opportunity is. I've had some of the best opportunities come out of something that was kind of crappy that I volunteered to do. Like nobody really wants to go volunteer to be at the chemical biological unit and check in wearing, mop gear. But man, some of the best opportunities came out of that. And then the same thing in art is, you got to pay your dues. You got to go do the little art shows, the galleries in a 4-H hall. Eventually you're going to be discovered by somebody and have somebody be like, hey, I see value in your work. So I like to give up control. And I'm a Christian, so I like giving up control to God. I think the path that He has for me is the one that's the right one. So who am I to question about it? Is just go out there, and it sounds cliche, but just go out there and live. This thing where you're always on the phone and being self distracting and power scrolling is going to be the death of our culture, especially when it comes to arts and entertainment and just genuinely being human with each other.
Pretty profound. I really do believe that. And instead of doom scrolling, you're actually creating art, and that's not something that's easy to do. And absolutely proud of you for that. So my final question for you,
Yes, sir.
um, has to deal with, and I'll segue this into, I allow every guest the opportunity to have the final word. So what I'm going to do is ask you a question. You can choose to answer it, weave it in or not. But if your art had a mission statement, the same way that we have mission statements when we're active duty, what would that mission statement be? And what would you like to tell the world?
There's actually a thing called an artist statement, and it's generally an artist statement kind of drives towards the reason why a person is creative and why they do the thing that they do. So I'm going to kind of lead into what my artist statement is, and that's connecting people through story. A painting to me isn't just something that's on the wall that looks good. Not the way that I make art anyway. I generally have good conversation with people. If it's an emotion or a story that it's happened to me, I try to convey that through the art. I don't just like sitting down and doing stills of vases that have flowers and some olives on the counter. While they have their place in the art world, it's fine art and it's right for the right person. I rather lose myself in the experience of storytelling, and the way that my art conveys that is going to be different to everybody, which means my art is always going to look different to people. Uh, so so I guess coming around full circle is what I want my art to do is connect people. If they're not just connecting with me as the artist and trying to share their story, then when they have the art on their wall and they're sharing it with their friends, now their friends or their family can have a connection with them that they didn't understand before. And I think as a human species, I think we're starting to get away from that level of connection of being real with each other. And that's what I want to kind of reintroduce into society with just a gentle nudge is with my art.
Wow. That's fantastic. It's just so rare we get to sit and have a conversation with someone, I think, who has so many layers, and has just an understanding the way that you see the world, right? And I know that it comes from um, of having a difficult journey, and the way that you look at the world, your outlook on life. I think it's a really positive influence, and I really hope as many people can latch on to this positive influence as possible. It's really affected, my day, my outlook on the way that we kind of go through things, and I can't thank you enough
Awesome.
for spending some time and letting me get to know you just a little bit more.
It's been my pleasure, brother. It's been a lot of fun. And if people are interested, I just kind of want to leave it with this. Art isn't something that's expensive to do. It's not hard to do. You don't need to take classes, but it's wildly therapeutic. Even if it's just writing lyrics or making poetry or just getting a coloring book and sitting down and coloring things in. There's a lot of benefits. It lowers cortisol, lowers, stress. It helps you sleep better. It helps with emotional maturity. So go out there and just give it a try. You don't have to go be an artist and try to get something into a gallery, but if you create maybe 45 minutes a week, you'll be blown away at the profound changes it could have in your life.
With that, Timothy Colomer, everyone, you can check out his art on artmajeur.com. You can search his name, Timothy Colomer. He's also got an Instagram and a Facebook here. We'll make sure to throw the links inside of the episode description as well. I look forward to seeing some ducks around the world whenever I'm traveling through place. I'm going to keep an eye out now. And then also your doggos collection. I'm really excited about seeing those things as well. Tim, thank you so much for sitting down with us. Your patience for working through me getting food poisoning and having you fly to California for no reason. I'm so sorry about that again. And just thank you for being authentically who you are. I think that this is something a lot more veterans should be able to see. So with that, everyone, my name's AJ Pasciuti, and this is Combat Story.